All right, it's go time. Yes, it is indeed go time. Can you post that we're live? Okay. All right, I'm gonna start letting people in. Boop, 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 boop. Bop, bop, bop. Now you can connect. There we go. Hey, Chad, am I loud? My, my stuff is like turning green for some reason. Hold on, I'm just gonna check the voice and video settings. Good morning, by the way. We're waiting for the town hall to fill up a bit more before we start. All right, I think we're good to start. So, good evening and good morning, Unicorn fam. Welcome to the Crypto Unicorns bi-weekly town hall number 32 with Aron Beierschmitt, Crypto Unicorn CEO and co-founder. This is our first town hall event for March 2023. It's the home stretch for the winter event and the month of the jousting release. Ooh. For those who missed it, town halls are now on a bi-weekly cadence, so that's twice a month instead of weekly. Half of the town hall events will be handled by Aron as usual, who is amazing at letting us know and visualize the long term of CU. And the other half of town hall events will be handled by members of the internal team who can provide deeper knowledge on specific things such as game design and game economy. So for the next internal team town hall, we're gonna have LG Rob, Rice, Ziori, very exciting, and Katrina, LG Cat. Category. There we go. In all other aspects, the town hall will be in a similar format as the ones we've previously held. As always, we've got Aron here, ready to spill the tea and spread the hype with Aron's updates. He's here despite all of the jet lag, so y'all better appreciate it. Good morning, Aron. How are you doing?
Good evening, Sparkly. I'm doing fantastic. I'm doing fantastic. The jet lag helped me get up, a few hours before this and prepare. So, taking advantage of it this morning. Heck, let's get right to it, folks. Let's talk about release 2.0. Technically, it's 1.9 in the cadence, but I asked the team to make it 2.0 because it's a massive, massive release. So quickly, what's in it? Jousting 1.0, the farming user experience updates, as well as all the filter and sorting enhancements that we've been talking about. pretty much on certainly that I've been talking about pretty much since on every town hall since I came back from paternity leave. It will also include the blockchain confirmation reduction from 60 to 30, which is a nice, quick 2x improvement on all of those flows. Kind of a hidden feature that I'm really very excited about is a in-game notification system. It will initially get utilized for notifying you when a jousting tournament is kicking off so that you can go watch that if you would like. So if you've entered a unicorn in a tournament, those tournaments obviously kick off when the queue fills. And so whenever that queue happens to fill, you need to be notified so that you can go in and effectively watch it live. If you click right into it at the start, you are effectively watching it live. So I'm very excited about the notification system. As you can probably imagine, we can take that baseline feature and then layer a lot of additional functionality on it over time. And you'll see it get utilized over the course of the next few releases to further improve all kinds of flows, in particular those related to hatching, breeding, and evolution. So that's what's in release 2.0. When launch, March 16th. Yay, there's your dates, everyone. When marketing, first off, we have been marketing, but there is a 5-day, 11th through the 16th plan. One thing that I hope everyone appreciates is data. Data is actually showing us that we've been oversaturating the number of posts via the CryptoUnicorns Twitter account. We're going to kind of try to do fewer, more impactful posts to try to really drive those home. So there's a structured plan of teaser materials from the 11th through the 16th. We'll also be launching a series of targeted corn drops to all of the, I would say, racing adjacent communities on Polygon, of which there are many. That will launch just after the 16th on, I believe, the 20th. This is going to be the largest campaign we've done on the Great Corn Drop front to date by a pretty significant margin. And it's my hope, especially given the wider reach of this campaign, as well as it matching up with a friendlier user experience, like just lock in that corn and start to joust, leads to a nice inflection point for us. In addition to that, we'll be continuing the Twitter Spaces. For example, I'm very excited to go on The Real Jonah Blake on the 15th, the day before the launch of jousting, to start to build hype with what I think is a really great community in the NFT and gaming space. So very excited to be going on The Real Jonah Blake on the 15th. You're also going to see us doing Twitch streams and spinning up a more structured content creator program, which the one and only Ziori is beginning to headline here internally for us. So, I've been seeing a lot of the sentiment around when marketing, and marketing is coming. Marketing is structured. A marketing plan is structured and in place. And I'm excited to see it implemented by this wonderful, wonderful team. I think in the past, my one piece of pushback is, in the past, we've been told don't give dates until we're ready. And now we're ready. So I'm excited to give a date. There's obviously a structured plan alongside of it. And I appreciate all the patience that the community has shown in the lead up to this. All right, moving on. What's preseason? Well, there's a blog post today. So I've been seeing all the call outs. Everybody wants to know. It's coming today. So get excited. Get ready to dive deep in all the nitty gritty of how we plan to run preseason. Preseason will kick off the day of launch, and it will end at the very end of April. Part of the reason to do a preseason is to allow us to kind of all get our hands dirty with jousting. You can expect every 2 weeks with the tuning updates we do that we'll tweak and tune based on live data and likely some community polls based on what we're seeing. To date, we've simulated jousting predominantly via Monte Carlo tool, so we can simulate thousands and thousands and thousands, I guess really now tens of thousands of matches to understand the outcomes, the variation in the outcomes, and that obviously helps us kind of tweak and tune and balance things. Given the flexibility of the jousting system and our ability to create a tournament with specific stat requirements or class filters or mythic filters, etc., we've got this very, very, very um, wide design space in which to kind of tune and balance. And so preseason is going to let us take live data and obviously refine and balance things in the lead up to the Grand Jousting Tournament. So the Grand Jousting Tournament will launch in early May and it will run for 60 days. And you can consider that like the first major tournament um, with some really, really big prize pool money. There is a little bit of prize pool money on the preseason front, which you will learn more about today when the blog post goes live. But a big part of this is, again, let's get something out. Let's drive new players into it. Let's get all of the feedback we can out of the community, get a couple of tuning and balancing passes against it. And then the Grand Jousting Tournament will be another excuse to go out and really attempt to market and scale the game specifically around the jousting battle loop. So that's release 2.0. What about 2.1, 2.2, 2.3? The target is to release, to get back to our monthly release cadence following this 2.0, shipping March 16th. In April, we're going to have kind of two major features plus a bunch of polish. But those two major features are kind of following up on the 60 to 30 confirmation reduction, which is coming next week. We'll be launching this kind of massive Web3 or blockchain UX improvement. So non-blocking, lock and unlock transactions, loot box multi-stash, keystone multi-unstash, evolution, breeding, and hatch improvements, non-blocking evolution, hatch, and breed flows. This will also include the notification system to tell you, hey, this XYZ nursery needs you to complete this transaction. Click, go to nursery, hit the button, transaction, great, back to farming or whatever, jousting or whatever the hell you were doing, right? A stretch goal in that release, in the April release, is also going to be using in-game RBW and Unim to execute those transactions, which would solve one of the final pieces around stash that I think is a little weird, in that you need currency in the wallet to execute those transactions currently. And so utilizing in-game Unim and RBW is the stretch goal. If it doesn't make it in April, it'll go in May. What is coming in May? Delegation and the nursery user experience improvements. So specifically on that front, surfacing the very valuable gene data, which right now you need to use external tools to utilize. Obviously, Haku has built some really phenomenal tools on that front for our community. There's been for a long time various Telegram bots that you can utilize. Breeder DAO is about to announce a dashboard that they've built for our community that we're just now giving final feedback on. That'll be another great tool for everyone to use. But ultimately, we wanted this experience to always be in-game, and the enhanced nursery user experience shipping in May will be that. So I'm very excited about that. Finally getting relevant gene data in-game, and in particular, seeing how boosters influence that in-game is going to be, I think, enormously valuable for everyone that's getting deeper and deeper into the breeding game. And then, of course, June is Tribes, which will be the first major release that adds additional layers of depth on top of the farm sim that we have today, and as discussed many times, begins to pivot us away from this single player kind of infinite progression sim towards a cooperative PvP and PvE tribes-based gaming experience, which we've kind of seen popularized by various games, in particular mobile free-to-play games like Clash of Clans. Oh God, I have three more things. At the end of March, you're also getting the Shadow Corn and Tribes feature reveal. The key component there is helping everybody understand through Act 2 all the way through Act 3 how both Tribes and the Shadow Corn roadmap are going to kind of shape the pivot of the farm sim from this infinite progression game, single player game, to this cooperative PvP and PvE experience. And the goal there is to really outline what the mid to elder gaming experience looks like so our players can understand where we're going with those features and, in particular, how we are putting them together. I'm very excited to have gotten so far out ahead finally on the product and design thinking behind those features. Our art director, our wonderful art director, Bo, is putting some great finishing touches on concepts to help sell the vision there. And my expectation is players will be pretty excited. I've been lurking in the Shadowcorn channel for quite some time, and I do think a lot of the ideas are very similar to how we are looking at shaping that experience. In addition to that, April is skill-based PvP month. So you have both the Unicorn Party and the Team RPG playtest launching. We've been having a lot of fun internally with the Unicorn Party games. I'm very excited to kick off drip marketing campaigns specific to both Unicorn Party as well as the Team RPG playtest. Yes, even though it is a playtest, we plan to run leaderboards against it, so there will be a reason to engage beyond just wanting to test the gameplay. So it will have some link to the core game economy, and there will be definitely an incentive to get in, learn the meta, and grind, all the way up to the governance vote on whether or not we go with the kind of match 3 Team RPG style or the auto battle Team RPG style. That's a lot. I get a little bit. My final comment is I get there's some negative sentiment right now, I think, predominantly around the fact that we've been a little quiet. And I get when we're kind of quiet, there's this fear that builds up that we're either not paying attention or not doing certain things or we don't have certain plans. Keep in mind, I just hired 2 people. I fired someone who was performing poorly on the marketing front. I hired 2 new wonderful people, one who started this week and one who started 3 weeks ago. We've already seen a phenomenal impact on that front. We've actually had the most new active wallets in our entire history in the last 3 weeks. We've all seen the hodler, the holder numbers on our assets go up and to the right. So we are seeing the results of our early marketing efforts. Everything starts as an experiment. As we begin to see what works, we double down on it. And so I would really ask the community to consume all the material that's about to get thrown at them, get excited behind all of the different moments that are about to occur. I've seen a lot of people fixate on singular dates or times, like jousting March 16th. If we don't see 10,000 players that day, like it's all over. What I care most about and the strategy on the marketing front, which is marketing 101, like you have to tell somebody something like 15 plus times before it becomes a thing that they remember, right? Part of the strategy is I want people who follow us and have heard about us to continually hear about all these launches and go, wow, a month ago I could just farm. Wow, now I can joust. Oh, and I can also do PvP, real-time PvP cross-platform with Unicorn Party, WebGL, and mobile. That's pretty compelling. So you have to understand part of the marketing strategy here is layering all of these launches together in a way that people begin to see the ecosystem that we're building. And I want the mentality to be that a unicorn alone is an access pass to this entire world of entertainment. That is a thing I put in the State of the Union at the beginning of the year. It's something that we're very committed to. And yeah, we're sitting here on March 10th, and it's taken us 60 plus days to line all this stuff up and get these launches ready. And the reality is that is us taking the time to try and do this right, and taking the time to actually take all the feedback we got from you guys around past launches last year, and again, making an actual attempt to do it right. So I'm excited to sit here. I don't have an hour limit. We're going to let this one take as long as it possibly is necessary to address comments, questions, concerns, anything that is top of mind. I am here for all of you. Let's get in the weeds. Let's get in the shit and have some fun. Back to you, Sparkly.
All right, I am loving the vibes. Thank you so much, Aaron. So, without further ado, let us get this town hall started. You heard it, man. We don't have a hard stop for today. We know that's a lot to suddenly dump on y'all, but I think that's a good thing. So, if you have a question, remember to hop in. We have a three questions per person rule. I'm willing to suspend that for now if your question is super important. But yeah, let's try to stick to that. If it's been answered previously, you'll have to ask something else. Any questions related to your account or a Zendesk issue, that's something that we need to address on mod support and not here. To ask a question on voice, please press the request to speak button. The button looks like a raised hand. And once we accept your request, you'll see a green bar at the top of your Discord. Click accept to begin speaking. We also have written questions. It's on the Town Hall Bulletin Forum channel on the Town Hall 32 thread. You can find this in the events and activities category. Take note that we prioritize spoken questions over written ones. You can also head on stage and ask any question that you can find there. But first up are the anonymous questions. We accept a maximum of 5 entries that are anonymous per town hall. So let's get started with them. All right. The first question is RBW rewards on Quest are reduced. Do you plan to put a Quest jackpot like in the loot boxes? Are you planning to tune the Quest rewards until jousting release?
Yes, so we absolutely have continued to constrain RBW source via quests. A big part of that is, just straight up like looking at the data. If you look at the RBW held by Unicorn and landholders prior to the launch of Quest, so this would have been like early November, it's roughly 5.8 million. And you look at it today, as of yesterday, the 9th, it's 11.2 million. That inflation of RBW to unicorn and land owners is specifically because of Quest. And so it actually peaked at almost 12 million, 11.9 million on 223, and it's begun to kind of cascade back down a little bit. Yeah, I think we will constantly tune and rebalance quests. What we have done now in terms of constraining it is not necessarily always going to be the case. And the question around kind of these jackpot quests being in the mix is something we absolutely do plan to do, likely at the highest rarity mythic. Where, yeah, you can occasionally get a quest that's, hugely rewarding. Now, with Quest V2, which is planned for next month, the April release, the really important part of Quest V2 is we get the ability to chain quests together. So you no longer have just a singular quest you complete and then you move on. You would have a quest that gives you basically access to the next quest, the next quest, the next quest. We can do this both via the board as well as the event quest structure or feature, I guess I should say. And I'm really excited about quest chaining because quest chaining could feasibly give you something to do where, 30 days you've got to complete a thing. And on the 30th day, you have all of the inputs to take on that final quest at the end to get something big. And we look at that and likely will tune and balance that very similarly to day 30, 60, and 90 kind of daily login bonus systems, which are kind of the bread and butter of mobile free to play games. And so, very specifically around that, yes, we do plan to have like quote unquote jackpot quests, but with Quest V2, it's likely going to be less of a discrete quest you just got lucky to get and something where you can kind of strategically plan out and basically complete a number of quests along a chain to kind of ultimately get something at the tail end that would be very exciting. So I guess that's kind of what I would say to that. But it's a good question. We're obviously responding to the inflation of RBW very specifically to land and unicorn hodlers relative to the growth of new active wallets over that period of time. I think I've said this before. It is very complex to tune and balance the economy. We tuned and balanced for growth towards the end of the year. That growth didn't hit. We've now had to apply a lot of economic tightening changes to the overall economy. As we start to see daily active wallets spin upwards, we'll make changes again that are likely in a direction of loosening economic policy as well. So it is something that we will constantly tweak and change. And it's not just up until jousting. Every 2 weeks, you can expect some form of a quest rebalance with likely every month and post every new release, especially with like Quest V2 when there's new features, like an entirely new slate of quests. So this is a feature that will constantly be tuned and balanced and is something that we very much designed to evolve over time.
All right. So for anybody who wants to ask further questions on that, you can raise your hand, just hop onto the stage, or you can ask in our special thread for that on the Town Hall Bulletin. Next up, when will the jousting items be included in the Rainbow Marketplace? Right now, the players can't see the importance of the jousting potion materials to craft them, especially since the quests have tier 3 mats as requirements.
So the day of jousting launch, the RMP will get that update. So with the 2.0 feature release, you'll have all tiers of tickets available and all tiers of the potions available, which is going to be kind of an interesting test for potentially adding some of the higher tier boosters and stuff. We are debating whether or not we'll keep just 3 tiers of potions over time or expand to more tiers over time. So there is some question on that front. But yes, with the 2.0 release, you will get the 3 tiers of tickets currently and the 3 tiers of potions will all be available in the RMP.
All right, love it. Okay, so we have one person with 3 questions. Okay, here's the first one. Question about the recent Theory airdrop. How did that happen that this airdrop did not require people to join Discord, verify their wallet, and require some activity, but just required Twitter and email? That could have led to multi-accounters completely pulling out their rewards and dumping unicorns and lands on OpenSea below floor.
Yeah, so the reason for the difference is experimentation, right? We see certain claim and conversion rates with the higher friction drops that require players to come into Discord and do the things that were just mentioned by this individual. Beyond that, we wanted to try a lower friction drop, especially given the size of Zeori's audience. I looked at the dashboard this morning. We set up dashboards very specifically cohorted to each of these campaigns, and no wallet has actually directly sold an asset that they were given. There were a large amount of transfers. We are building the next layer of analysis now across all of our campaigns to look at that layer deeper, like even 2 to 3 transfers post to see if there was a flip or a sell at that point. But with the data I have available, that did not happen. His campaign has driven Beat Chumby Valley and Pirate Nations to drive the most new players we've ever had in a single day activate into the game. So we may find that lower friction campaigns are actually a much, much, much better way to go. And the last thing I'll say, I say this a lot anytime the question comes up, you have to understand the mentality at which we're approaching the Great Corn Drop with. Back in mobile free to play, I'd go to Facebook and I'd buy 1,000 users, and I'd probably spend $10 to $15 to get a mobile free to play user via Facebook. Of those 1,000 users, I would expect less than, like if we had 300 of those users the day after install, so day 0 is install day 1 is the day after. If we had 300 players left, I'd be like super happy, right? If we had 200 or even 150, I'd be like, but still potentially okay, depending on what like day 7, day 30, day 90 retention is going to look like, right? The reality, though, is expecting 70 to 80% of your players to be gone the next day is the reality of performance acquisition on mobile today. That money that we spent to acquire all 1,000 users, where did it go? It went exclusively to Facebook shareholders, went to Zuckerberg. The money that we've spent to market the Great Corn Drop was actually spent with our existing community. I bought all the land and unicorn bundles from you all. So we're spending marketing dollars within our own economy, and we should expect on some rate that there are going to be people that claim these bundles and flip. It's our responsibility to build experiences again with all these marketing launches. The hope is it's like, well, gosh, they've got everything coming, and why sell now? Unicorn Party looks fun, right? Obviously, we are responsible for kind of driving that, but I want to make it very clear that like we should all expect a certain percentage of flippers. So far, we've seen about 20 to 25% across campaigns. That is a very acceptable rate. Again, coming from the idea that used to I'd lose 70 to 80% the first day, and all of that money went to Facebook and didn't go to actually supporting our ecosystem. So that's a really important thing to kind of internalize, and it's part of the experiment behind the Great Corn Drop is can we actually, via this more Web3 native way, keep marketing dollars inside of our ecosystem? It's certainly still leaving the treasury, but I think we can all agree that like it's much better that it leaves the treasury and goes to network participants than going to Facebook or Twitter. We will be trying some Web 2 to Web 3 marketing campaigns. I didn't mention this earlier, but we're working with a group called Superfine, which has run campaigns for Thetan Arena, Champions Ascension, and other projects. I really like Christian, the founder. He's a kind of performance marketing wizard from mobile free-to-play. He's at Catch App, one of the largest hyper-casual companies in the world. Was at Kixeye for a while as well, doing their performance UA. He's pivoted to building a Web 2 to Web 3 kind of user acquisition platform and agency. And so that's going to be another test. But I'm going to be very cautious of kind of comparing the ROI for us of going that route versus what we're doing here with the Great Corn Drop. And we're really trying to find ways to leverage this more and more and more. And my hope, especially with the jousting campaign being the largest campaign we've kind of ever run, targeting very directly communities that I think have high overlap on the gameplay front, and particularly communities that have kind of fallen apart a little bit and are well past their peak. I would really hope we see strong conversion rate on that front. But bringing it back to the original point, it is very important to understand that we should all expect a certain amount of people claiming bundles and flipping on the open market. And I don't look at that as a failure. I would only start to see that as a failure if it began to exceed what we would normally see in performance user acquisition on free-to-play mobile. But great question. Thank you for asking that, whoever you are. You said there were three, Sparkly. What's number two? I'll try to answer the next two quick.
Okay, so the second one is there a soft or hard cap of berries output and berry speed bonuses in the farming plots?
I don't have the answer for you, Kaiser. I know this is Kaiser.
Oh
You shouldn't
boy.
be afraid to just come forward, Kaiser, and ask these questions. LG Corbin will get back to you today on that. He may actually, in fact, be typing to me now. So I'll get back on that one.
This person who may or may
Okay,
not
the
be
answer, wait, I
typing.
have the answer directly from one of our PMs. No, but we do have plans to cap it eventually.
All right. Okay. So third question, last question. How are Yuri's first days at the new place, and what is Takoyaki Guy's job position in Laguna Games? Notice that he received the role recently.
Yeah, so it's been wonderful working with Andrew, aka Ziori. Already he's really dived in and started to onboard well. Been counseling me on, a bunch of things, and I've really appreciated how quickly he's kind of dived in. And his experience on the Sky Mavis front is I think very helpful in that they hit a level of scale we've yet to achieve, and so many of the same problems and things that we've experienced, they experienced at a scale far greater than what we've currently achieved. And so already taking and getting really good feedback from him, and I'm excited to see him begin to own a lot of core initiatives that are going to have a lot of overlap with marketing, product, and obviously the community. So very excited to have him in. Obviously a huge shout out, I think he's here. Happy Friday to you on your first week at Laguna. Takoyaki, so I'm super pumped. I was actually going to announce today that we had hired Takoyaki. As everyone should hopefully imagine, he's doing UI UX. We obviously, loved a lot of the iterations that he was putting out in our Discord as well as on crypto Twitter. I think he's got a phenomenal sense for taking our existing UI and components and really reinforcing them. One of his first projects is likely going to be this nursery user experience improvement. So it's been, we've had some false starts in the past attempting to hire, from the community, and I'm really excited to, hopefully have Takoyaki be this perfect example of someone on-ramping to Laguna from the community and having phenomenal success in their role. So couldn't be more excited to have them as a part of the team and adding even more UI UX firepower to what we're building. So super pumped to have both of them.
Super duper excited as well. So there's actually I believe we have a Dune dashboard for the Great Corn Drop for the people who were asking about the stats. It seems we do have a couple of people who are very interested in the stats that we have for the Great Corn Drop recently. I'll see if there's something that we can release. All right. So I think that's all of the anonymous questions. Let's move on to our speakers. Hey, Kaiser, please come on the stage. Are you or are you not the anonymous asker?
Oh, I'm not that one.
Hmm.
Good time zone. Um,
Good time zone to you,
actually,
sir.
I I actually have 5 questions, but are we allowed to give in 5 questions?
Let's
I
just
was
keep it
supposed to,
rolling.
Yeah.
I'm kind of fucked
yeah, I
on
was
the jet
supposed to do
lag.
it like
Sorry,
a shadow
Kelly
porn
likes
game,
crypto. Um,
but
so mainlining coffee. Let's do it. Let's lean into it.
okay.
Shoot.
Uh, sure. Question one. Are we going to have like more information in the data warehouse in the future? Like, because right now we have some limited sets of information. It's already great for data analytics. But I was thinking if maybe is it possible that in the future we just type in like a wallet address over there and then we can see maybe the stats of the land inside, like what's in it, or maybe their inventories, or maybe just the buildings. I was actually working on my KB. I was thinking it would be, I think it would be best if we can pull those data as well, and then we can just show it to everyone. And I think if we set that also to public, it would kind of look like more of the blockchain side. But I want to know your view about it, and yeah.
Yeah, you're touching on a little bit of a sensitive subject because in the Web 2 world, right? GDPR, particularly in Europe, privacy protection laws, right?
Mhm.
You are not allowed to disclose or directly identify an individual, and so we really did specifically kind of de-identify the data warehouse such that you can't do what you are looking to do. I do think other partners like Haku, and we've seen some of this coming out of the Moonstring team, have created tools that get you closer to that, where you can kind of put in an address and see more about their inventory and their behavior. And obviously, we have Dune dashboards. Shout out to Mr. Cryptoholic, who put together a really great Dune dash. There's a few discrepancies in it that we're kind of looking at, so we may reach out to him with some clarifications on that front. Specifically, the circulating supply I think is too high, so that's made me think somewhere he's got reading the contract wrong. But the point there is that that specifically identifies everyone that holds RBW, and you can immediately see who bought, who's down, who's up, when they bought, how much they bought, have they staked, all of that kind of wonderful information. So it's Kaiser, it's like a little bit of this balancing act. I don't necessarily want to leverage the data warehouse in a way that would run afoul of those privacy regulations. I think, especially in the current market environment, we have enough gray area regulation crap across, skill-based and real money gaming and gambling. Obviously all the crypto gray regulations. Data privacy and protection and GDPR is also very, very clear. Sorry. In contrast, GDPR and data privacy regulation globally is kind of set in stone and very clear and is not gray area. And so again, it's a little strange because we're working on public ledgers, right? So what you can expect out of the data warehouse is like with jousting, you can expect more data hitting the warehouse around events that are running and things of that nature. But as far as basically allowing you to directly identify specific wallets and their behavior, that's likely something you should not expect from the data warehouse.
Sure, understood. Thank you for that. Next question. Are we going to have like, because Founders Reward program has already been finished. I'm
Mhm.
not really seeing it as a I'm not really seeing it yet as a balancing issue. But are we gonna have like a Founders Reward program 2.0 or something similar?
We are looking at doing a 2.0. I want to make it clear that we've not made a decision yet on that front. Obviously, I didn't even mention this because it's already planned, but Staking V2, of course, is launching over the course of the next couple of weeks. Just another thing that's kind of happening in the middle of all the chaos and madness of Jousting's launch. So we are looking at that. I think part of the sentiment is we're entering an era where there'll be all of these leaderboards all the time, right? You'll have leaderboards for Unicorn Party. You'll have leaderboards for Jousting. You'll have leaderboards for the farm sim. And I'm leaning more and more towards we probably want to incentivize play. I think we have seen the results of incentivizing passive staking and have now through several mechanisms made changes to that based on the last year. So it is something we are considering. We've not made a decision on it. I'm personally leaning away from that and thinking that we should put the focus and effort on incentivizing leaderboards that are going to incentivize progression competition over just being a part of the program. But I have been thinking about what are the equivalents of battle passes and things that we could potentially do, right, that would like force a little bit of an upfront thing from players. And I've been thinking about scaling the tier of the battle pass based on the amount that you have staked, or maybe based on the amount of boosted badges you have. And so anyway, it's something that, again, we're thinking about it a lot. I'm certainly open to thoughts from the community around ways to incentivize player behavior around this kind of stuff. But I do think it might be time to think of a slightly different mechanism than just, as you mentioned, like a Founders Reward Program 2.0.
Awesome, thank you. My third question is that been really thinking about it. This is actually a question that I'm supposed to ask last month, but I think it's a bit late now. But it's about the farm sim. A lot of my, at least because when you guys had the found the corn drop, some of my at least some of my users or at least my friends, they were asking if we can use it on mobile. Is there maybe in the future like implementation in it where they can just use a login? Recently, I we're actually worried about situations also in mobile whereby user gets hacked with their MetaMask from their mobile. So is there like maybe if you are planning to maybe implement like a mobile feature in the future, is there like maybe like an email login that maybe they would do, or is this something that may be open for you side in the future?
Yeah, mobile is a struggle generally. And I saw comments from people like NFT Gibby, and so I'm glad that you kind of brought this up. Originally, the strategy was to move to mobile relatively quickly. We have learned in the past year, and I mean, I've had direct conversations with people like, Alexander and Philip from Sky Mavis and stuff about their experience trying to get past Apple review. And I mean, we can all see the results of it because they haven't formally, launched
Yes.
a game with direct NFT integration. So Apple has made it very, very clear that they will not allow NFT gated gameplay, which is the fundamental kind of thesis for what we're trying to do here. Google and Epic Game Store have a more kind of laissez-faire stance on it. And so a perfect example is like with Unicorn Party, right? With Unicorn Party, we have a cross-platform real-time PvP game. On one hand, you can play it on WebGL. On the other hand, you can play it on Android. It's a Unity front end, so going from Android to iOS is not a rewrite or a Herculean effort. It's just QA time. And so we are going to, with Unicorn Party, test getting onto the stores, test that download flow. There is a very limited free-to-play experience where you do not need a unicorn to play. You get kind of an ugly, actually, I think they turned it into a horse as kind of a joke, like a gray box horse. And so again, it's like this will test and see what we can and can't get away with on the platforms that are at least more friendly to what we're trying to do. But to divert resources to get the farm sim in a state where you can play it on mobile, because we don't have any strong indication of Apple's stance changing to be more favorable towards projects like ours, I just personally think would be a waste of resources. I get there's some limiting factor in not having the farm sim be mobile. Unfortunately, and mobile from the standpoint of like being native to the hardware. Obviously, we have people who do play on Android tablets or play on, if you have a newer iPad, you can certainly play the game in WebGL on mobile without too many problems, right? So it's one of those things around like putting the extra time and effort to support the mobile platforms natively, I view as a mistake. And quite frankly, it was a huge part of the topic of the CoinOp conference that I was at. And it was very much reinforced by many other people in the space. I've also talked with Ryan, the COO of Decentral Games. They were betting very heavily on ice poker going mobile and that being this inflection point for them. And just like Sky Mavis and others, they have been shot down. And so anyway, Kaiser, you're asking the difficult questions. I don't have a perfect answer for it. But we are kind of at war with these centralized platforms, and I won't change the game to the point that all this NFT blockchain shit is pointless, because that to me would be defeating the very purpose of everything we're trying to do, right? So, hopefully we get Google Play and Epic Games Store maybe enough, quite frankly, right? And if we see that really work well with Unicorn Party, that would begin to change my my thoughts on the matter, and maybe encourage us to go Android first.
Correct. Actually, I've been reading also this. I agree with you with all that, thoughts, because testing the Google Play is actually, I mean, testing it with other platforms first, at least other games first, before you go in with that, is actually a good approach. But what I was thinking is that, because this one I've been hearing in Discord, that maybe we can just release just an APK, like, remember from Axie days, at least from my side, from the Axie days, they just released an APK, and their user base actually grew. But again, there is a difference between our game and their game. But
well,
saying
direct
that
download of an APK is
yes.
something that we can consider. It is more QA time, and it is supporting yet another platform
Yes.
for us, and that is more work and time and effort. It means every single release has another component to it. So you can imagine there is fear internally around, like, we just feel like we've knocked a few releases out of the park. Things are in a good state. We've not had major issues go live. And so, yes, every time we broach the conversation, it is a little bit of a thing. But you're right. And I'll double down on the idea of like Unicorn Party is the first test. If we see data that shows that is the way to go, I will reshape how we're thinking about cross-platform. Because the goal ultimately was to be cross-platform. We've just hit way more headwind than I would have expected, particularly with Apple. But you're absolutely right. Side loading via the APK. I had this exact conversation over dinner. I sat with Alexander and Gabby and a few other people. And so anyway, it was very much top of mind for them. And I see them probably shifting more back towards that strategy, given how well it worked for them, at least for a while, right? So again, I'm very open to kind of shifting and tweaking that strategy, especially if we start to see data that backs it up with the Unicorn Party launch in April.
Thank you so much for that. Really excited about the Unicorn Party as well. Okay, fourth question. This is gonna be quick. What is our update for the golden tickets?
A golden ticket marketplace, I think, is currently on the roadmap for the June Tribes release timeframe. The golden ticket marketplace will be external to the game, so it does not involve the core game team. It involves the web team. But we're putting things like App Store 2.0, player profile stuff. Actually, speaking of Andrew's first week, he's got a lot of really good ideas that we're trying to kind of codify around new player experience, and like what does landing into the CryptoUnicorns kind of ecosystem look like for new versus like current players versus elder players. And anyway, the golden ticket marketplace is a component and feature of that. I have a wild idea that I came up with actually on the plane that I'm going to pitch the design team as a way to provide utility to current holders in a way that I think is not going to be too much hassle on the team. I know that people listening are probably freaking out because I've said something vague, but trust me, team, I have an idea that's just a little bit of work on the ops team to provide some utility for ticket holders. So more on that soon, Kaiser.
Okay, this one I'm not sure if this is still going to happen, but remember before we have the discussion about the loot box leaderboard? Are we still going into that, or we're thinking of moving ahead and just not doing it because we're actually releasing a lot of rewards already? Maybe what are your thoughts about it?
Oh, are you referring to kind of the idea I pitched around like that meta system around loot box opens? Is that what you're
Yeah,
talking
it's what
about?
I think it was around
Yeah.
April when there was like when you opened a lot of loot box, you go to this leaderboard and such, and I think that never materialized because we were doing a lot of stuff and everything was like crazy and yeah.
Yeah, it got deprioritized. I think loot box behavior right now I'm pretty happy with. I mean, it's interesting to see the value that they hold, you know, when we mint them and distribute them around, you know, the leaderboard events and things like that. And this is a part of too, where like we're also entering a phase, like back in April, we just had the very basics of the farm sim together. We were pre-quest, we
Yes.
were pre-keystones, we were you know, and so it was certainly an idea born out of that time. And I think similar to some of the other things, you know, I've talked about around really focusing on all of these simultaneous leaderboards and having those be where we're stacking the majority of kind of the incentives for the community, I think is probably the best path forward. I don't think we need any new sources of things. Down the road, I really liked the kind of metagame idea that I had for it. But I just don't think it's high priority relative to everything else we've kind of been talking about.
That's all my questions. Oh, woo. Thanks, Aaron. Really appreciate
Thanks,
the
guys. I
time.
appreciate it.
All right, take care, sir. Bye bye.
Have a good night. We're wheeling back. Whoop. All right, next up we have Goliath Rules. Goliath Rules is from the Pirate Nation community. So shout out there. Thank you so much to our pirate friends who accepted us so warmly and had a lot of questions to ask for us in both the spaces that we participated in. Hey.
Hey, thanks for welcoming me. And honestly, I've had just a blast with the game since I got in, and I got some of my pirate friends in, and we've just been really enjoying what we see. I gotta say that you walk into the game and you're like, oh, it's unicorns and farming, but then you start getting into it and you realize how complex it is. It's like there's so much to do, and my brain's just going, okay, I got to go over here, I got to go do that, I got to do this and that, and it's just so cool. I mean, there's so much involved, and like the graphics are super cute, and just the characters are just really engaging, and I just really love like what I see in that. And I actually got my first baby unicorn, and it's Web3 Maniac is the name, and I'm like, that's freaking perfect. I'm just like, that's
Oh God, it's so we've
so
gotten so much life out of a random name generator on that front. That's been one of the like magical things about how we set that up. But yeah, thank you so much for the feedback. It's wonderful to hear. You know, some of these. This is to everyone here talking about win marketing. This is exactly the results of a lot of time and effort on our team, and I hope it's kind of the first of many. So very, very excited to have you here, and yeah, wonderful to meet you.
Yeah, thanks. And I actually have a player group that I have that I'm starting to talk with them about, hey, come on in, join the pool, the water's warm and that. And I got some folks coming in from them. So really it was a good kind of step into it. And I'm really starting to take the news articles or like the announcements and stuff, move them into my server I don't have a
Wonderful.
ton of players, but I have like players that are dedicated players, like they're actual gamers, and that they're not flippers. They actually like to play games. So, which I think is very valuable in the sense that they'll stick around and that. So I kind of like that in terms of
For sure.
what my group has to offer.
Meaningful growth is meaningful growth, right? We're not really, my expectation is we scale probably slower than everyone wants, especially in the current market, but it is most important that we scale with the right participants in the ecosystem. And I think anyway, so very much agree with that. And yeah, I don't care if it's one or two. If they're engaged and active and bringing value into the community, we're happy to have them.
Yeah, and then I was talking to somebody else, and they're like, well, CryptoUnicorns has been around forever, and that, I mean, I go, yeah, the point is that they've been around forever. They're stable. It's a great game. It's a good platform. It's mature. It's what I want as a gamer to come in on, and that's what I want to walk in on. I don't want to walk in on something that's like what I've had before. I actually got completely rugged on one project and lost like $10,000 on the thing and that was like my lesson learned in 2022, which is basically you really got to kind of pay attention to the signs and that. And I remember following you all back. I mean, you all have been around for a long time, and I was initially thinking, way back in the day when you started in that, I should go with this one, and then my gut said, no, I should go with this one, and then my life choices were bad, and I was like, but it's all good. I'm here now, so that's the important thing, right? So, and I'm just having a blast. I'm a gamer. I've been I've been an Xbox gamer for like, 20 years. I've gamed since 1987 when the Apple IIe came out. I'm old, right? At the end of the day, but I still love this game, and I love what I see is going to come with regards to jousting, with regards to RPG, with regards to play versus environment and play versus play. I mean, I'm looking forward to kicking somebody's butt in jousting. This is going to be fun. So, but
Wonderful to hear. Yeah, wonderful.
I want to ask a question though on this.
Mm-hmm.
So I come in new. I'm learning. I mean, there's a lot to learn, and obviously I'm
Absolutely.
learning as I go. But are there some there's a lot of loot boxes and items that are out there, and I know that events come and go. Are there any holes that people can step into in buying like a loot box that's gone away from an event, and like they don't get anything out of it that's valuable, or like are the loot boxes actually have some point of value to them? That's one question. Let's start there.
Yeah, the loot box value certainly is dependent on the type and the rarity, right? So it's a good thing to kind of recognize, like, not all loot boxes are equal. Obviously, common, rare, and mythics, represent items that generally are going to be valuable to particularly those who are earlier in their journey, I would say. And then you have things like the winter loot boxes and the more event-specific loot boxes that certainly have their own value. I think one interesting thing, this is actually brought up, there was certainly some friction from some Pirate Nation people coming over, so I'm happy to hear that you had a nice journey on your side. I think we recognize, like, first off, a Fatui onboarding tutorial is a part of the 2.0 release next week. So you won't be dropped into a damn skybox. I mean, we've absolutely, recognized for a long time that is subpar and you can't get away with it. And, you called it out yourself. We've been around a long time. When we launched, the market was certainly very different. There were way fewer games online. Now there are more games online. There are more games coming. It's a natural time to kind of step up that experience. So that's a huge part of it. We have the new game guide launching. We're kind of taking direction from some other projects that have based their guides in Gitbook that I think are just more easier to follow. Christina, our new director of marketing, had a great idea to kind of break it out into beginner, intermediate, and advanced as well, which I think will help. And then being in Gitbook, we can kind of more rapidly take community feedback and things of that nature. But I'm spiraling out from your question. On the loot box front, and this is actually a great suggestion, we should probably have, like we have a living roadmap, we should probably have a living loot table for all the existing mythic, not the existing loot boxes, not just the mythics. So I'll take that down as a note of feedback. I think that's a really good thing to note, because we don't want somebody having certain expectations of a thing that they're purchasing and then those expectations not getting met. And it's no sweat off our, it's no issue on our side to present the tables, because we obviously have them in data. And if we make tweaks and changes to them over time, like we did tweak the winter loot boxes, for example, there is not Unim being distributed out of them outside of the jackpots in response to some of the feedback that we received. But anyway, Goliath, I'll take that as a note of feedback. I think it's a really good idea to put those reward tables in a place that's publicly facing.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, and the one thing I was wondering about on this is that, I'm not asking. So I don't know if there's placeables that you can have within the actual loot box, like maybe there's a Christmas tree, maybe there's a teddy bear. I don't know. I mean, are there things like that you can put on your lands in those loot boxes? Because I haven't been around long enough to know.
Yeah, not currently. This has been a feature that the community's requested for a long time. Tribes is going to be one of the reasons we've not put time and effort behind it. Is with tribes, you'll have this shared, like I can go and look at your farm if we're in the same tribe, right? And we're thinking about ways over time to layer kind of cooperative play. Like maybe I can collect your poop for you if you're not there, and things of that nature. And so when that occurs, you now have the social space to begin to show off things, right? Outside of just taking a screenshot and posting it on socials and stuff. And so we call them totems, and we've also called them props. So totems will have like inherent value, and there'll be a reason to have a totem, and guilds, tribes competing over having totems and things of that nature. And then we are looking at effectively like decorative props, which may or may not have utility, but allow people to kind of style their land and make it their own. But it will very much happen over the course of the tribe's release.
So you guys are thinking, so let me ask that question, then that leads me into this question, which is, I'm a big Sunflower lands player, or sorry, yeah, it's lands now. And basically there's things that I can put on my farm that allow me like a plus, 0.1, in this case it would be berry or whatever the case is. Are you all thinking about things that you could basically put on a land and it might give you like a 10% bonus for output or something like that if you have that thing on the land?
Yes.
Okay.
It's in a slightly different way in that totems will be so we use the term very frequently internally, LOD, level of detail. So level of detail 1 is just your farm, right? Level of detail 2 is you seeing your land plots and being able to move them around, right, for adjacency bonuses. With the release of tribes, you're going to have what we call LOD 3, which will pan back even further. And that's going to allow you to have a cluster, your cluster, and then come over and sit by my cluster in tribe space.
Okay.
And within tribe space, the idea is there will be these totems, which are kind of floating islands that give adjacency, effectively the equivalent of adjacency bonuses. They're not necessarily going to be the same type of bonus, but they will have an area of effect. And the idea will be, as a tribe, you want to collectively get these totems, level these totems up, and these totems will help you do different things, right? And so it's more at a kind of cooperative level. And then I think at a player level, at an LOD1 level, like, yes, we still are very interested in doing props and stuff, but I would expect those bonuses to be a bit smaller, kind of like what you did, right? But I want to get the cooperative kind of shared gameplay in first. And so we're putting totems over props in terms of prioritization.
I think that's awesome, because I think so. You're all talking tribes, basically clans, essentially. And so that's great.
Yeah,
I love the fact that you're focusing on the cooperative piece in that, because that gets interaction. Right now, so many Web3 games are really just, I'm sitting in my hole, in my in my game chair, and I interact with folks on Discord, but I never really get to play with anyone. And so it's really nice to hear that you're moving in that direction, where it's going to be sort of like, yeah, I got to have friends, because friends are good. So yeah, it's good. The onboarding thing honestly was a little rough, because I mean, there's so much to your game. It's really like a lot to digest, and I like the fact that you're going to focus on that area and that. I what I ended up doing was I ended up posting some videos that were done by YouTubers and that on like how to like get started and stuff like that, and it got some folks, down the road until like the Pirate Nation folks were like, "Oh, you're posting too much unicorn stuff in our channel." I'm like, "Okay, fine. I'll just go to my player server and tell them all about it." So fine, whatever. So, but yeah, if you get a guide out there, I think it'd be good for everyone. Okay, so
For sure.
I think it was a good discussion. I appreciate it. So I'll give the floor to somebody else. So thanks.
Thank you for coming up, and I appreciate the thoughts and the feedback. It's wonderful to have you and many of the kind of Pirate Nation's crew over here enjoying the game. And yeah, the upcoming launches and things, I think, one thing to call out as you're kind of leaving the stage here is like you'd heard about us for a very long time and you finally kind of checked us out. It's wonderful that you're enjoying the experience and getting through the onboarding hurdle. Like we're through the Fatui, through new game guides, through trying to get much better about promoting the wonderful content from many of the creators who have built super helpful guides. Like doing all of that will vastly improve on ramping into the farm experience. I've always struggled with this idea of like, yes, it's this cute kind of unicorn casual skin, but it is a very economically deep game.
Oh yeah.
Actually, Hilmar, the founder of CCP Eve Online, I spoke on another panel with him this week, and it was all about like managing Web3 communities and stuff. And without revealing stuff that he didn't want shared, like Eve is thinking very heavily about this space, and that's wonderful for me as a games entrepreneur who's occasionally felt crazy about what we're doing. And, have we just gone off the deep end here to have someone who's managed the most complicated virtual economy of all time over 2 decades of time, and to hear how they've dealt with mega community crises. And, they have a council of 9 that show up and get flown out to Iceland every year. And it was like wonderful to kind of see a lot of that. But he reinforced a lot of the fundamental theses here, which is like you need insane economic depth. Eve has a massive hurdle to getting into and to learning, and it's far higher risk than ours. I mean, time and time again, people get wrecked just showing up in the to mine the wrong asteroid and stuff. And so that was kind of wonderful to just talk to someone else who's had a lot of success in the space, that many of the things they've been very successful with over time. And one of the reasons they've been successful in getting players to on-ramp into that brutal experience is, he literally said, social gameplay, of course, is the reason, right? He showed a bunch of stats from player surveys, and the number one reason to play Eve is with friends and to cooperatively play and compete against other people. Individual competition and leaderboards is certainly fine, but beginning to shift towards the social engagement front in combination with all the battle loops is like huge. And it kind of comes back to what I was saying on the marketing front earlier. With all of these releases, like even if you still don't want to farm with corns, like maybe you want to do real-time PvP, maybe you want to get into team RPG, right? Like finding something for everyone with all of these battle loops, I think is where we'll have success, and hopefully gets more people like you that have heard about us but still haven't made the jump to really consider doing so in the next few months. So anyway, thank you again for coming up. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I only didn't make the jump because I make poor life choices, but now now I'm good. So but anyway, hey, I did have one question. One question on economy, actually, now that you left that door open, which was, where the heck are the seed prices coming from? Because I mean, coming into it, I go to the market and I'm like, there's a seed price there. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll just sell for that. But I don't know why that price is there. I guess that's one question. And then I'll shut up.
That's a great question. The RMP is an automated market maker, and it uses the same constant market equation that you would get going to Uniswap and swapping DAI for ETH. So all we did at the very beginning is we seeded the RMP. And when I say the very beginning, May 5th, to my knowledge, we've reduced liquidity once. We've never added more liquidity to the market. So we seeded it with a certain amount of RBW and a certain amount of items, right, on the other side. And that price is literally the market So the price you're paying
Okay.
is whatever the current, market price is. And this is where Hilmar and I really started to kind of hit it off, is like that real time kind of marketplace is part of the reason that the economy has so much depth and opportunity for specialization and things like that. And we've seen players be very successful timing the market correctly and being able to kind of profit off those market movements. So yeah, you're literally engaged in what is kind of a PvP economic sim game, because that RMP is a real automated market maker. It just
That's
exists
super
off
cool.
chain. Yeah,
That's super
thank
cool.
you.
So is there a spot in that I can actually see charts of like the price for particular seeds and stuff like that for items, or is that something
Yeah,
that's
there
coming?
are a number of community run dashboards. I'm sure somebody
Okay.
can share them in general right now.
Okay.
Kaiser is a wonderful person to follow. He was up here earlier. He puts out tweets that kind of showcase where the market's at, and I think has a dashboard. So yeah, there are several tools that you can use to kind of see that. After the nursery UX, and definitely following Tribes, because Tribes is very UI heavy, especially the initial, here's how you set up a tribe and set all the roles and permissions and all that kind of crap. So probably after Tribes, we'll be looking at an RMP UX upgrade. And I'm very interested in kind of making that feel more like the live market it really is, and leaning into historical data and kind of doing some stuff in game that gives you more of that experience.
Okay.
But right now,
In the
there's a bunch of
meantime,
wonderful community dashboards. Yep.
yeah. In the meantime, would it be possible? And then I'll be quiet after this one. Would it be possible to have like a 7-day percentage change added to the left side of the price as like a statistic? Because red and green is good, right? But I don't get any indication as to how much up and
Exactly.
down it's gone. So if you guys added something like that, it'd be cool. So okay, now I'll hand it off. So, but thank you.
For sure. Thank you for coming up.
Thank you so much for coming up, Glass Rolls. We appreciate you so much. Thank you for coming up. Man, I really appreciate the new people in Pirate Nation. I mean, a lot of people, we've had a lot of people lately because of the corn drops. Pretty successful. Next up, we have The Truth. Hey.
Hey, how's it going? How's it going, Aaron, Sparkly, everyone else? Thanks for having me
Great.
up. Long-time player, love the game, love all the iterations and finding the new metas and everything. I did have concerns about marketing, but it seems like you guys are, handling that and working towards kind of new tests, new adjustments here and there. I have a few questions around the marketing in terms of daily
Sure.
players and things like that. I enjoy all the stuff that you guys are doing and trying out and everything. Just wanted to get a little more your thoughts about kind of like the breakdown percentages of getting those sticky users who are onboarded and are playing. It's clear that we have a lot of passionate people in our community, and that's probably where you get a lot of the angry feedback and things like this. But what is your kind of marketing take on are you putting 70% into rewarding the players who are here, 30% into new onboarded users? When you kind of think about that breakdown of like what is your current top priority, is it the current users who are already here? Is it onboarding new people? Is it a combination? What's kind of like your, I guess, has anything shifted recently in terms of like your forecasting for the next year of like what you really want to target in that marketing aspect?
Yeah, we've already learned a ton. I guess I'll start top of the funnel and then go downward. So first learning was like, we can't just expect badges to drop out, or we can't just expect the idea that we can drop a badge to a wallet we're attempting to target and they'll claim at a high rate unless there is a very strong awareness campaign tied to it. So, the immediate shift, and, that resulted in things like Chumby Valley and the Pirate Nations partnership, was this shift towards directly partnering with those organizations and making sure that they are endorsing, these drops, right? So we've already seen a much higher claim rate from the more recent corn drops to, versus the original ones where we just attempted to kind of blast it out to sandbox land to sandbox and sunflower land. And so, we're already kind of learning top of the funnel. All right. So the challenge there is that means things are a bit slower than we would have expected, right? And so I think jousting gets kind of interesting because, you only need one corn to come in and joust. And we have the ability to identify a wallet that received a drop and gift them kind of a small bundle that will let them compete in tournaments and things, right? Without necessarily needing to, needing to figure out how they need a jousting ticket, right? So trying to kind of smooth out that on-ramp for jousters coming in via the Great Corn Drop is the first big kind of experiment, is can we effectively give you a badge that gives you a real asset, and then there is a carrot inside of the game for locking that asset in. That carrot isn't necessarily something you can just wholesale dump and exit. Well, I guess technically you could sell your jousting ticket, but a tier 1 jousting ticket isn't going to meaningfully affect our economy negatively, and it'll make it cheaper for another person, right? The automated market maker kind of helps us with that level of balancing. You're asking for percentages. I'm not sure if I can give you any off the top of our head. I can say that one of the struggles has been we've tuned the economy several times for growth. And then I've had all of this pushback from existing players around the idea that we're giving out too much and we're making things too easy for people. And there's that constant balance of, if you are a pure grinder who is just looking to progress in the game without putting any additional value in, many people are that way, but spent enormous amounts of money on these assets when the prices were inflated during the bull market, versus someone who is coming in new. The reality is the player base across the board in aggregate is maybe 40% of the way through the land content in terms of progressing their lands. Like, yes, some people have gotten to level 10. There's very few, there may be one account that has all level 10, like fully upgraded land across the board. And so we look at that and we go, okay, there's still an enormous amount of grind and an enormous amount of sink that the economy still has in it. And then you look at kind of newer players, especially as we've tightened the economy, and it's pretty hard to progress with just 2 corns and land. What we are testing is, can we get these people to go and buy a few additional corns, right? That's the part of the marketing that we're looking at very closely, is like, how many people are on-ramping into the experience and not just sticking around, but are actually purchasing more assets. That's kind of the point. I'm going to give you something for free, but man, if you had 4 more corns right now, like, that would be a pretty big win. And maybe you want to play the jackpot unim loot box game, right? You spend $100 over there. And so observing what people do when they're given something for free, right? And does that behavior mirror mobile free to play, where I'd expect only 2% of people to actually spend money over time. I would expect a higher percentage of people to spend in this market. So do you have any more kind of specific questions on the marketing front? I do think we are trying to focus more on ramping and onboarding at this point, and things like Unicorn Party and Jousting in particular, and even the Team RPG playtest give us a much easier on-ramp for new players. And the question will then become, what percentage of players that just came into Joust eventually go, you know what, I want to start breeding. Well, I need a land plot to do that. Okay, I'm going to go buy one. And whether they buy it from the vending machine or secondary, they're still buying it and adding value into the ecosystem and into the network. And so that piece is like, the farm sim is super hardcore. It's designed to be that way. I really hope one day we look back and everybody goes, wow, they brutally focused on getting the features in place to create a foundation to the game economy that has a lot of depth and breadth, and then they went about layering the battle loops on top of it, right? And we'll see if that strategy works. This is the hill I potentially die on if it doesn't. But I really think we are well positioned now to basically have people on-ramp into a much friendlier experience and get into the depth of the game over time, where right now you're kind of faced with the depth like immediately, if that makes sense. Do you have any more specific questions on the marketing front? Obviously, this stuff is super top of mind. and a huge focus for us.
Yeah, no, thank you for all those details. It sounds, well thought out, and like this is a priority. Just kind of like seeing some stuff in the community of, people come up with some pretty good ideas for potential marketing. Um, and I know that you guys have your own agendas and everything. Do you think there is a possibility of creating sort of a community marketing council, right? Or kind of voting for ideas of specifically just marketing. Like off the top of my head, I love that we're getting other communities like the Pirates and other Chumbi and things like this. Maybe if they had leaderboards themselves for each individual community that we bring on and say, hey, great, you've got this, Pirates coming on. Well, let's incentivize them actually playing the game instead of just selling their assets, right? Like, let's do a leaderboard for all of the new people who've come specifically from the Pirates, and then give out things for specifically that community. I know that that may piss off the hardcores, but it doesn't have to be something extravagant. But maybe the top player from the Chumbi or the Pirates community gets whatever. Things like these to really make sure that the people who are coming on board who are new are seeing that, like, hey, if I really grind, or if I really take this seriously, or if I really get involved in the game, I do get rewarded, not just great, I got this small package, and if I want to go spend a lot of money, maybe somewhere down the road, kind of instantly see that capability to earn, to be part of our community. I think the strongest part of our community is that they are so involved. And I think when people get more involved into the game, they see that, yeah, this game is really thought out. There's so many different aspects of it that I can partake in. Maybe having weekly, not Zoom, but similar to town halls, you have weekly new onboarding sessions, right? Where you have anyone that just got new assets come and we'll have a guide walk you through locking your land, doing certain things, taking you through maybe the first way to become profitable, kind of just like, a new onboarding. You can have the same thing for people with, 30 to 50 unicorns or over 100, right? You have all these different communities within the community who all are like, oh, great, cool. There's a community for me in this community, right? Similar ideas of all this kind of stuff of like, I've got a lot of marketing ideas. Maybe they're not so great, but I would love to see more stuff, like suggestions of ways to kind of engage different areas and maybe give kind of some funding to go out and go and do these campaigns and things like that.
Absolutely. I mean, you've put forward a lot of really great ideas just here and now. I mean, we've enacted certain changes, like the newcomers channel, I think has been working phenomenally well to try to just filter anyone who happens to be new in here. It's a very interesting idea to just host kind of working sessions and just walk people through, certain aspects to the early player experience. So that's a great idea and something that we can certainly add to our list. I'm, definitely looking for like a RFP or request for proposals around, how do we build a affiliate program? How do we build a kind of invite your friends program that's somewhat Sybil resistant? I think I've been disappointed in the past when we've tried to do the gift of corn events. We've had even very, top tier community members in our Starcorns and Founders channels, like some of them exploited that. We are very aware of that kind of stuff. And so there's been some false starts that we've attempted to grow via certain channels. And we need to think of programs that, that limit that. What I was mentioning earlier about jousting, though, is kind of what you're looking for, in that anyone that gets a corn via the Great Corn Drop jousting campaign, in addition to just saying, hey, check your wallets, there's going to be a whole posting around, and here's the onboarding program specific to anyone coming in via that channel. And that will include do X, Y, and Z and get, this kind of similar to the Pioneer program back in the day, where if you stay engaged, you run a certain number of tournaments and these kind of things. And I also mentioned, like, we're going to be delivering a in-game loot box to these players that allows them to collect a little bit of starter material, enter their first tournaments and things of that nature, right? And so again, and because we targeted all these wallets, we already know they're not necessarily our community members. We can't always get that 100% with multi-accounting, just the reality of the space. But at a decent level, we'll know, hey, these are like real wallets that have engaged with these other games, and we're now targeting them. And so you're right, just giving somebody an asset but not putting a carrot inside of the game is a problem. It was really something I wanted to pull off the very beginning of the Great Corn Drop, and I think was a mistake. We are correcting that with jousting and making it very clear to people, like there's a whole program you're being entered into as a result of being selected via this airdrop campaign. So we are thinking very similar along those lines. You'll see more information in the lead up to that event launching. Listen, I know occasionally I get in chat and can be a little flippant in my keyboard mashing. The reality is, and I hope everyone understands this, like my team and I really care and give a shit. And that's why we spend time in Discord. And sometimes I show up and it's pretty frustrating to see some of the comments and stuff, but it is not us not paying attention and not listening to suggestions. So whether it's in Ask the Devs or the suggestions channel or this new serious channel, like put ideas forward. We're very interested in having them. Again, I'm specifically interested around how can we do a referral program that's reasonably Sybil resistant, right? How would we structure that? What does new player onboarding and kind of, I often call it the daily login bonus. Daily login bonus is like the bread and butter of free to play. And the idea is just retention. Stick around, you get these things. Stick around, you get these things. Engage at a higher level, you maybe get a higher tier of things, right? So what our daily login bonus ultimately is, and that program is something I'm very, very interested in and open to suggestions on.
Cool. Yeah, I think, dealing with a game of this size, I'm sure it can be really hard to focus on one aspect at a time and not get overwhelmed with, oh, okay, like we've got this great idea, let's do it. My only gripe would be, for the marketing stuff, for the onboarding stuff, think 7 steps ahead of just the drop. So all these marketing things are great, but if you don't keep that momentum going, then some of them may lose kind of their return on investments and things like that. And obviously I'm giving my 2 cents, and I don't have the perfect answer or anything, and I'm happy to discuss and try to go through all this stuff because I love the economy, everything you guys are working on. So thank you for that. But just would love to see help out more onboarding stuff of making sure that once people are in, they're having a good time. Because I feel like some of the marketing campaigns have been, oh, that's a great idea, let's drop it right away, great. And then it's like, oh, you didn't get anything out of that, or there's no follow-up to it, there's no, here's what we got from it type of thing. So I'm glad that you guys...
You're kind of explaining why listen, I'm not going to... you're kind of explaining why I've made changes on the marketing front.
Yeah. No.
Right.
And there's no like...
We recognize that. The only person to blame is me for not making changes earlier. I'm very, very happy with the new people that we have in place, and I appreciate the kind of patience as we do refine these things. So I hope what you're hearing, at least from me, is like no denying that in the past we've not followed through, and the expectation from everyone in the community should be that we're on top of this and going to continue to kind of improve it. Because you're right, so no pushback from me on anything you've said there.
All good, and I see it happening too. I get frustrated only because I want the game to do well, and I know that the community does, and I know that you guys are working hardcore on getting it all, and there's a million different moving pieces. So if I can help out in any way in that specific area, more than happy to give feedback and hopefully grow in a positive way. But thank you. Thanks for having me up.
Always appreciate it, The Truth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, The Truth, speaking nothing but truth. All right. Next up, we have SW Morton 19. Please come on over. Hey, Sam.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, doing great.
Awesome. I missed the first 40 minutes, but I just had a couple questions and I just wanted to get your thoughts on them, Aaron. What do you think about increasing the RBW fee for the LVM, Evo, and breeding?
We certainly are looking at maybe changing that. You know, I think one of the pieces is like, we've seen this expansion from 10K to 125 or almost 125,000 corns, right? The vast majority of them are still used every single day. I will maintain till the day I die that is and sets us apart from every other project in the space with a generative economy, right? Where only a small subset of those things have any utility whatsoever, right? And so we're about to approach a situation in which jousting, every single corn that goes up to joust, unless you're immediately pulling it back and replenishing its energy and putting it back on the farm, right, is going to need a farm corn to kind of replace it, right? And so if you think about the fact that we've got, let's call it, you know, I don't know, 1,400 or well, the easier number is 2,000 monthly active wallets, right? And you look at, okay, that's, you know, they have almost 125,000 corns deployed, right? What happens if we go to 5K monthly active wallets, right? We need a shitload more corns if a decent chunk of them come and play the farm sim, right? And even if they don't, and we have 20 or 30,000 jousting corns on a daily basis, you're going to need to replace that 20 or 30,000, right? So we're at this position where it's like, I want to see what happens with the emission reduction that is now in place, the economic tightening that we've done, and the growth before we make any changes to costs associated with RBW on and Unum on breeding and Evo. You know, if you're really looking at the data, I think we just hit an all-time low in terms of the actual Unum supply in the hands of players. Like if you look at the circulating supply, it's remained mostly flat. I'm very happy and very proud of our ability to do that. But if you take what we've purchased in the QE wallet, what's deployed in liquidity, you know, we just, I think, dipped below 100 million in the hands of players. And you think about, well, how much of that gets sunk? Just how much would we need, by the way, to evolve all the babies we currently have? It's about 30,000 babies. It's more than the supply currently held by players. So even if the game is leaking out 500K, a million Unum per day or something, like we're just not super concerned about that. I want to see what happens to the prices of these tokens as we start to see a bit of demand with the constraints. And then I think that is a better time to really evaluate and make a decision on breeding and Evo. I will say on the LVM front, we plan to put forward a proposal to adjust the costs there, particularly for the higher rarity land. I think that's something that makes sense, but given that is a smart contract that we've already put out there, I want it to run through the DAO and be approved by the community before we execute changes on that front. But I am very much in support of increasing, particularly for the higher tier land, the cost associated, the RBW and Unum cost associated with purchasing new land from the vending machine.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense to see the changes and how it affects the economy before making any drastic moves. So that my other question, you're probably going to say kind of the same thing, but I'm just curious. Have you ever wondered what the RMP would look like if Unum was actually the medium of exchange? Because it might be an easier way to save us some money from the treasury, and you'd be able to be more drastic with the taxing rate because, you know, it's kind of monopoly money in a way already as a commodity token, and then might save us that money. But then, yeah, we're not sinking that much anyways, even if volume like 5x's.
There's been times where I've kind of run through the thought experiment with the team internally around like what that would have changed. I really like the idea of, and this just comes back to some of the securities FUD crap that we're dealing with from certain members of our community. One of the things our lawyer really likes about our token is the fact that RBW has such high utility inside of the game itself, right? And being that medium of exchange really supports the idea that it's a gaming token, right? And so it's yet another thing that differentiates us from groups that kind of have a governance token with no real utility and maybe some form of governance and a staking program, right? And the mere fact that we have the in-game utility of it, you know, I think is really great. And I also prefer to I assume when you're kind of talking about taxing the Unim side of things, you would expect that tax to be burned, right? The nice benefit of the RMP is like we've had 8 million in volume, counting the price of RBW every single day since we launched, across a few thousand wallets. Very proud of that level of volume. And you look at the 5% rake that's having, and that over time as that scales could be very significant and is yet another way to remove RBW from supply. And I want to see, so you're right, I'm giving the same damn answer, which is like, I just want to see what happens with a bit of growth around this. And I'm very confident that the design and using the governance token as the medium of exchange over Unim, the commodity currency, is good. I mean, we have enough utility for Unim between all of the crafting stuff, obviously breeding and Evo. And there's a question around, do we adjust costs associated with some of those actions? And that remains to be seen, but I'm pretty confident in the design decision we made originally on the RMP front.
Okay, yeah, that's a great answer. And then last question. I really like what Illuvium's doing in that, like, they're kind of, and this might get into the securities topic as well, but Illuvium is going to be redistributing some of the ETH that they earn to ILV stakers. And
Yes.
I think that's really cool and not something I would want to do today, obviously, but would you be open to that design choice like 2 years down the line when we have sufficient runway, like funding is not a problem at all, like it's booming, everyone's minting lands from the vending machine, like, is that something you'd be open to?
Definitely. The idea of real yield is something that we talk a lot about internally. Real yield in the eyes of regulators looks a shitload like a distribution, or excuse me, a dividend. And that's very, very problematic, right? So it would be a challenge to pull off in the current environment. I hope as regulatory guidelines get codified into law over the next few years that there's more clarity on that front. But yeah, I mean, the sad thing was, like, we had this really cool idea last year, which we executed against, where, we bought $500,000 worth of VE-BAL. We staked that VE-BAL. We started directing balancer rewards to the RBW LP pool. Early on that was working well. It was something like 20% or so in BAL. And then immediately balancer governance came in and said, well, you have to have a certain minimum volume before you can even participate in this program. And we just kind of got cut off there, right? And I really wish I'd staked everything to Aurora Finance, but I was concerned about the additional
bumpy drama,
smart contract risk, the additional smart contract risk of using Aurora Finance. I think they've turned out to be a really good protocol that has stood the test of time, and I feel very different about them now. So when our VE-BAL unlocks here in June, we may make the choice to roll that forward and effectively try the program again. If we start to scale as an organization, we could very easily hit the threshold, and suddenly you now have BAL tokens coming across. So back to the comment around real yield, I'm way more interested in potentially farming other projects' tokens and offering them as a reward to our stakers. And so I would probably return to some of those ideas first before we start looking at supporting yield out of the treasury, because that is absolutely, to your point, considered a dividend. It's very clear we're likely going to see the SEC hammer on a lot of DeFi projects first that have been doing this for quite some time now, right? The SEC is usually 3-4 years behind us all, right? So anyway, did that answer your question? Do you have any follow-up on that, Sam?
Yeah, no, just to your point, I know Dabaz had an idea the other day in Discord of like taking some treasury funds, buying some apes, selling the ape staking rate or staking rewards, and then that'd be like good marketing just to flag that for you, not necessarily saying I think that's a good or bad idea, because I personally hate the Ape Yard Club, Board Ape Yard Club, but yeah, it was an interesting
I missed
idea.
that. So I want to say I really like that idea, and I've thought in the past like that might be a great marketing scheme for us, and maybe even using those as a carrot for ranking up in leaderboards and things like that. So that is an idea that I actually really like. and might be a good way to get certain communities that have ignored us in the past or just don't or aren't aware of us to pay attention. So yeah, I do think that, and I like that because that's kind of a Web3 unique-esque way of doing marketing. And so I'm always going to try, and I'm always going to be biased towards those kind of ideas over going back to performance, just, standard performance user acquisition. That space is an absolute shit show. You literally have the like Playtika, which is one of the most successful mobile gaming companies of all time, literally said they're not releasing a new game until the mobile marketing environment changes. So that really tells you how IDFA deprecation and now you lack the ability to directly target devices based on the games that they've played in the past and their LTV and all this stuff we used to be able to do, which kind of made mobile marketing so effective, is gone now. And you have the groups that were the most successful groups of that wave are now turning away from it. And so that to me tells me, well, that may be where Web3's success ultimately lands, is it gives us a way to step past the Web 2.0 world, where again, Facebook took your eyeballs and sold your eyeballs to anyone who wanted access to them and your data. And who profited? Facebook and Facebook shareholders. I guess Facebook shareholders profited, right? In Web3, you've got this opportunity to kind of say, hey, will you try, like, here's an advertisement where you try a thing I'm giving you for free, or maybe if you come in and play to the truth kind of questions, like here's these carrots to incentivize you to play. I can actually bake incentives inside of the product to attract people in, offer them real value as a starting point for coming in, for their attention, right? And now I'm paying in a peer-to-peer fashion someone directly versus a middleman and an aggregator or another platform. And that to me is the hopium for us all right now, is there may in fact be a way to leverage Web3 to, again, remove the middlemen. This is what's always been about from the beginning, remove the middlemen and allow people to trustlessly transact, right? And so that's really fascinating to me. And I hope we start to see more and more traction with some of the more Web3 native marketing campaigns, because we're getting a lot of reinforcement that performance user acquisition, in particular on mobile, is a flaming dumpster fire right now, right?
Yeah, that all makes a lot of sense. I just love hearing you talk like Aura and Web3 native things. Like, the reason I got into this project and why I won't be going anywhere is how much of a degen you are and how much you get crypto. Like, you can't be a game dev and not know crypto and try and learn it on the fly. So yeah, thanks for answering my questions, but super excited for the rest of the year.
Always appreciate it, Sam. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sam. All right, we have a couple more people. We have Jackie Ace coming up on the stage. Hey, buddy. Hey. If you are speaking, you may or may not be muted.
Sorry, my push to talk didn't work. Hi, guys.
Oh, there it is. Hey.
Yeah. Just a quick question regarding the betting co-op thing that was announced by Aron a couple weeks ago. Wondering how the situation is on that and what kind of data will be shared there, and if we will funnel some of the gambling revenue into the CU ecosystem.
Yeah, all of that is very early. So for people who weren't here, we've been talking with SX Network, which runs a Polygon edge-based, basically a sidechain to Polygon itself. They were originally on Polygon Proof of Stake. They currently host a bunch of sports betting, basically, is their kind of bread and butter. In the past, they've worked with certain projects to set up oracles where the result of whatever that project was doing is reflected, and you can set up a betting market around it, right? So we've been looking at ways to put like ELO ratings and stuff on chain as future jousting features. None of this is shipping next week. This would be future jousting features. And trying to find a partner that wants to effectively run the betting side of that. And so SX Network is the first one that we're talking to. There are a few more prediction markets that are coming online on Polygon that may in fact be better partners. So we're trying to kind of evaluate and figure out who's going to be best. As part of the SX Network discussion, I believe it's a 10% rake back into the treasury. There's also this kind of invite code that we can all use so that there's an additional kind of bonus coming back to the treasury as a result of any activity that we might drive on that front. Given the enormous regulatory gray area that we sit under, not just in the crypto side, but on skill-based gaming, and the line that rides between, again, skill-based gaming and full-on gambling, like we've got enough on our plate. And so the one thing I won't do is build our own prediction market, right? Because that at the end of the day is 100% gambling. Just like you'd be betting on horse races, right? So trying to find a partner that wants to take and utilize the data that we're sending them to build prediction markets around this stuff would be very interesting. It will require a slight change to jousting because right now jousting is queue-based. And so you can see all the upcoming tournaments and how many unicorns have been entered in that tournament and the requirements to enter that tournament, as well as the rewards of that tournament. You make a determination based on your stable, what unicorns are going to go in where. Once you put them in there, when the queue is, at 8 of 8 unicorns or 16 of 16 or 32 of 32, whatever it is, the tournament kicks off, right? You'll get a notification if you happen to be in game. If you've set and forget, you can come back and watch it later, right? But that queuing system will have to change in that, we'll need a system where it's like, here's a tournament, the tournament gets filled, and then there's enough time in between that, and everybody obviously having the data around the unicorns entered into that tournament to begin to make a predictive decision around which unicorn you think. So sum it up, Jackie, very early discussions, looking for a partner on that front that effectively wants to host the prediction markets, and it will require work on our end as far as basically creating a new type of jousting tournament itself, and then kind of going from there. I think one interesting thing is like racing will be a little different because racing is real time. Jousting is technically real time if you start watching it when it kicks off, like you're watching it real time. The server is sending it to client, you're watching it real time. Racing will be different in that you will have to be present because you're going to have the ability to kind of somewhat affect the outcome in real time as your corn is racing against others. And I actually think that format is going to better fit building a prediction market on top of it. A bit, but it also has all these concerns around what if somebody throws a race and all this kind of crap, right? So very early, it's something that I think will add a lot of value on top of what we're building, but we have to find the right partner and we've got to build it correctly. So early on that front, Jackie.
Yeah, gotcha. Cool. Thanks for the answer. By the way, what's the timeline for racing? Is that like end of this year or something?
Racing will be the next big feature post tribes. So well before the end of the year.
Okay, yeah, just
well before the end of the year.
Cool. Yeah, thanks a lot for the answers. That's it.
I appreciate you coming up. Thank you, Jackie.
All right, thank you so much, Jackie. Okay, we have a couple more. Hey, Jeff Kills. Nice PFP, dude. Love that cool Squirtle. Hey.
Appreciate it. Part of the Squirtle squad. How's it going?
Great.
I'm great.
All right, so I have a couple questions, two main ones really. And I guess you probably obviously monitor Discord, you monitor sort of token prices, asset prices, everything of that nature. I know it's kind of your initial objective was to make a game that was easily accessible for kind of anybody at a potential low barrier to entry, I guess you could say, versus a higher one to start. Is there any sort of numbers, token-wise and asset-wise, that you'd kind of be afraid of? Like if it dips to a certain number, you kind of would set off alarms sort of and kind of change your approach or tactics. So that's my first question, just asset-wise and token-wise. Any kind of numbers you're gearing towards internally that would maybe be a concern? I understand we're in a bear market, so like everything's kind of bleeding red, but anything for you, kind of a system like that in place currently?
I mean, it's interesting, right? When we started, unicorns and lands were way more expensive than they are today, right? And everybody that started also remembers how plentiful the gathering carts and things were, right? Because gathering cart was a catch-all for so many features that we've now added. And over time, you have needed more corns and more land to produce the same output. That's just the reality of how the system has evolved, especially as we've tightened it. And like, quite frankly, there's enormous precedent in the blockchain space, just generally, starting with proof of work for things getting more difficult, harder to get over time as a network scales. So early on, pre-launch, everybody was saying, well, there's such a high barrier to entry to even start, right? Now, of course, the barrier to entry is far lower, but even with respect to the farm sim, it's still hundreds of dollars, right? The reality is, if you really want to start and be competitive in the leaderboards, you need multiple plots of land. You certainly need multiple corns. You need to be out grinding. Jousting, Unicorn Party, Team RPG, Playtest, Rainbow Rumble, and those kind of projects over the course of this year are the smoother on-ramps, are the things where the barrier just went from hundreds of dollars to, you know, purchasing a unicorn for 10, 15, 20 bucks, right? You know, maybe you purchase one for 30 because you want to hire stack corn or something, right? But in skill-based PvP, you can take a farm corn, and if you were good and you were skilled, you know, you're going to do well, right? And so I guess we're on the eve of having the smoother on-ramps across a series of different battle loops. And the farm sim itself, one of my regrets in how I would pitch it early is I would say Farmville, and that's a lie, right? The farm sim is a very hardcore PvP economic sim, and it is not a Farmville. I should have never called it that. It's actually one of my biggest regrets in how I attempted to market it, because it gave it a very it gave it a very casual pitch to match the casual and friendly theme and art style, right? And it's just not really that true. And the farm sim is incredibly complex. It is supposed to be a difficult on-ramp because of the economic depth and breadth. And again, this is like the hill I'm going to die on, which is like, we needed to build this foundation first, but I think I mispitched what that foundation was. With Jousting, Team RPG, Unicorn Party, things like Rainbow Rumble over time, right? Like, those battle loops represent an opportunity to bring in players that don't necessarily have interest in engaging with the farm sim and the complexity for it. And if we've done our jobs right, they will naturally drive value down to the farm, because you need things that the farm produces to be competitive in those loops. So that's part of the thesis that we've had for a long time that's now like finally getting acted on as we ship these features. Did that answer your question, or any follow-up?
Yeah, no, that all makes sense to me. Definitely more avenues of exposure and more potential angles for different types of game enjoyers. I mean, I think everyone here, I mean, if they don't like games, then I'll understand why you're doing crypto gaming in the first place. But that's a different topic, I guess. My other kind of question, kind of unrelated, a little related, I guess, to total sort of economy-wise, I guess, behind the scenes for Laguna Games and everything you have going on. Personally, myself, QA manager in this sort of tech industry, more of a small company. And I know you guys raised a decent amount of capital. So I guess kind of my question angling towards that, what's kind of your approach on like maybe a lean team versus more of a widespread team? Because I know myself personally, coronavirus stuff happened, you know, layoffs happen, team sizes reduce. My team size got cut in half, and that sort of forces you to be a little bit more attentive, and it really puts more eyes on the fewer amount of people to really see a person's quality of work, I guess, for exactly what it is, versus, you know, if I imagine your position, you're managing like a good amount of people, and it's really hard to specifically focus on one avenue, especially with your time. So I guess, what is your kind of thought on like a lean team versus a kind of more wide, expansive one, which it kind of seems you have now, and kind of the benefits you could see potentially maybe getting leaner? Just your thoughts there.
Yeah, it's a great question. We had way too lean of a team when we launched, and I think that led to a lot of the struggles and challenges that we had over the few months that preceded the launch of the game May 5th. And so, you know, I forget exactly where we were in August, right, when we did the pivot, but it was just over 30 people. And we're now 100 in ping board. And that includes some part-time and certainly contractors and things like that, like both part-time and full-time contractors, as well as full-time employees across all of our locations. One of the benefits to being globally distributed is we get the opportunity to pay people in regions that are less expensive, certainly than the San Francisco Bay Area, and pay them well relative to where they live, and line up incentives in such a way that like everybody's pretty fucking pumped and excited, and has and sees a lot of value in being successful with what we're doing here. We talk about this a lot, right? Like, I think the Sky Mavis team's over 200 now. Zynga on Farmville had 400 something people contributing to that. Games that are being live operated that need content have very large teams. One of the dreams of this space is you can leverage the community via player generated content and other things to maybe have less of a large team. So we've scaled as we've needed to, and I think we're at the right scale to manage multiple game loops and all of the live operations associated with them, all of the marketing that is necessary. We've scaled QA over time. I think that's one of the areas we've improved in the most. We've obviously continued to scale the CM team. We've scaled engineering very heavily. We ran into a challenge towards the end of last year as we'd scaled engineering so heavily, and we had not scaled the product team as much as we needed to. And so, whether it was adding Serene on UI UX, Takayaki, who has just come in there. We've hired another PM who longtime games industry PM, more recently was at GenoPets for a spell. So it's kind of gone down the Web3 rabbit hole. I'm very excited to have him join in the next few weeks. And so the product team is probably the last and final piece that really needs some catching up to do. So I would say we still run a very, very lean team across product design. We have one phenomenal person in Rice doing our second party, managing all of our second party teams. She really has taken on this just enormous workload that really no human being should be able to stand. And she being who she is, has been able to do that. Without getting too, without having too many moments where I think she wanted to quit, because so it's one of those things where it's like we've scaled. There are still areas in which we're operating like at a massive deficit relative to how other teams in the industry would be structured, and I would point to that as being where we're staying conservative in the current market. And obviously, if things continue and metrics stay about where they're at today, we'll have some tough choices to make. And I think, those tough choices we'll have to address if the time comes to address them. So that would, I guess, answer your final question around maybe scaling the team down. But I think right now we've finally achieved a level of scale where, like delivering on the tribes and the Shadowcorn roadmap, like in the course of everything that's been happening, jousting, literally everything we've been building and doing, like we've had all these kickoff meetings for tribes, which is the core feature for Q2. So getting out ahead in that way and allowing engineering to come in very early and get buy-in on these discussions and things like this, it's all pointing to like, all right, we're finally hitting a level of scale and we've put the right pieces together, that I think we can again, manage what we're doing. Any follow-up to that or?
No, yeah, that makes sense. That gives a lot of sort of insight, I guess, from your perspective on team size and kind of where it all fits in. And I think it gives a lot of insight to everybody else too, from the outside looking in, because it kind of seemingly was a black box. I mean, there obviously is some career page in the team you have, but it doesn't necessarily give the amount of insight is that level. And I can understand having a bunch of engineers, but no product managers to write those JIRA tickets. So I can understand it's not always the funnest job, but somebody's got to do it.
For sure.
And I guess last kind of question, just I think one angle that, because I know there's some community-based content for like kind of just people starting of that nature, kind of getting an idea. And I haven't looked specifically in the details, but I heard it's kind of there's reasonable restrictions on what you can and can't include in videos or to get potential drops. I think, at least from my perspective, I think like really pushing community-based content and trying to get some sort of level of that. I know you kind of went out and try to find people, but I think with already an audience, it's kind of a two-way sword. I can understand you want people with an audience so they can get their reach versus people that know the product already and can make a good video for it. From my perspective, I feel like putting more incentive for community-based content. So I know like everything in crypto, it's like, well, I know the best strategy to make XYZ profit, so I'm not going to tell anybody. But putting a sort of paper trail of incentives for people to actually just continue making content and having a consistent stream of sort of community interaction, I think would be super, super huge. I know a lot of Web3 games don't have that necessarily, but every kind of Web3 game has its champion almost. And CU doesn't really have that champion. And I mean, a lot of the times, at least I know initially, when I was first looking into crypto projects a couple years ago, the first thing you do, Google search or type in the YouTube, this game, what are the best games, blah, blah, blah. And even if that attracts a handful of people, I mean, it's still a potential to be there. And I just feel like that's a void necessarily. Attempt like, yeah, I guess I could say a void sort of in the armor, I guess you have right now at CU. Any kind of comments on that?
This is one of the primary things that Zeori Andrew is going to be working on, is how do we better leverage the existing creators that we have within the community, as well as attract more creators to that community. And so ideas around helping to incentivize their videos, whether it's giveaways or putting marketing dollars behind the promotion and scale of those videos. All of these things are areas that we are actively thinking about and trying to design and put forward programs that help leverage that. It has been one of the funny things. Like it's just interesting. I don't know whether it's because we were Polygon first or what. But until Zeori joined, obviously we had Josh, Hyper HD, who has tens of thousands of followers. Like I've built a small following, myself, but we didn't really ever get any of the main large, in particular ETH mainnet accounts to pay attention to us. And I still think there's a lot of opportunity to kind of find who our champion is. You're right to say, I think the first couple of attempts largely fell flat. I think part of that was the way those programs were handled on our end, as well as just placing the wrong bets. And so I do think we have to look hard at restructuring those programs. And I think I'm going to lean towards how do we bootstrap grassroots programs that help us present opportunities both for existing players who are generating content, as well as kind of, offer this natural kind of attractant. Or maybe a better way of putting it is like a very specific onboarding program for new people who want to come in and kind of generate content. And I think I'm done paying X, Y, or Z individual to talk about us, right? There are plenty of people who have followings that are not necessarily doing paid marketing promos. And it's slower to go about getting those relationships and building those relationships. But the hope is that we can continue to do that. I mean, the Pirate Nations crew has been great because they're a little more ETH mainnet adjacent. I've seen several multi-100,000 follower accounts begin to follow me on Twitter as a direct result because they were in those spaces and things. And so Real Jonah Blake, I think, is another great opportunity to get our kind of messaging word out. So the 15th next week, that'll be an important day and something that, I'll really try to give us a good show on. These are perfect. Like if there is a specific program structure, particularly from our existing content creators that y'all would like to see, put those ideas forward. Andrew Zaori is, obviously already very deep in our Discord and paying attention to a lot of this stuff. So that's a great, the opportunity is now, I guess I would say.
All right, cool. Yeah, I think it's all I had. Just kind of wanted your general thoughts on pretty much all those different angles, but I think you pretty much answered everything I had to ask.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you coming up today.
Yeah, no problem. Got to get back to my team too, but appreciate the time.
All right, thank you so much, Jeff Kells. We really appreciate your time and your questions. Next up, we have your boy, Urinal Bowl. Come on over, Chief. Hey.
Hello.
Hi. It's been a while. Hey.
Good evening. I have two questions. I'm not sure if this was already asked in the past AMA, since currently this is again my the only time I was able to join the AMAs. First question is regarding RMP. When will be high-tiered items or jousting items be available in RMP market, or when will be there when will there be additional items sold in RMP? Since it's been a long time, but there are no changes or additional items that can be sold in RMP. Last time, I think the reason, if I remember correctly, was it lacks liquidity. But I think maybe for now there is already enough. I'm not sure, but maybe. Or do you just have no plan to sell high-tiered items in our MP yet?
For sure. The jousting items, specifically the 3 ticket tiers and the 3 tiers of potions, will be live in the RMP with the release of jousting next week. So that answers the first part of your question. The RMP additional materials, I give the same answer I continue to give, which is if we add all the materials, every single item all the way up the tiers across the board, it just means we have less tools to balance via quests and things of that nature, right? So right now, I think we continue to be more and more interested in like forcing players to go in through crafting loops and things of that nature. I would be a little bit more interested in doing it if we saw more evidence of players coming in with significant amounts of RBW that they either market bought or they've been staking, they're now applying it to kind of purchase. But we don't necessarily see that behavior. I recognize a lot of players of our current players would probably prefer to be able to just purchase a tier 6 booster at whatever the market price ends up being. But you have to understand, the second we pull that ripcord and make it live within the RMP, we now have the additional design challenge of balancing against a real market for everything in the game. And that's certainly an intimidating thing, just to be straight up, and something that we want to be very cautious about proceeding with. So that's not a no forever, but I continue to give the very same answer, which is the higher tier materials, once we put them in the RMP, represent a larger design challenge, a harder design problem, and something that we really can't walk back from once we do it, right? So the knock-on effects of making that change to how we design and balance quests and create incentives for those, is a concern and something that needs to be taken kind of seriously and not something that we just want to kind of YOLO.
Okay, understood. Then for the second question, it's regarding events. Will you be open to making event items like event seeds be able to be exchangeable to a different event item? Like, for example, cocoa seed to be changed to a clover seed with the cost, or for like 10 cocoa seed to 1 clover seeds or the sort. Since uh, currently a lot of the past resources are not useful anymore, or it's like not that great if you will use fill. So if we could just exchange them to a more useful one, something like that. Or this could be also used in the future events, like for like this event there are 3 different milestones. So if we could uh exchange the like past milestone to the current milestone event item, something like that?
The short answer is yes. We recognize that depending on the strategy in these events, you build up excess inventory of things that you're not necessarily going to use. I think if you're really efficient in your strategy, there's a way not to necessarily do that. But we do recognize, like I have a ton of cocoa seeds as an example, as a result of the strategy that I've taken. Now, allowing cocoa seed to clover direct swap during the event is probably less likely because we tune and balance the events very specifically, and so that would just kind of be another gate. But allowing cocoa seeds to be spent in some manner in the future, such that you don't just have this wasted inventory, is top of mind, and we do have plans around that front.
Okay, great. That's all for my questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming up.
All right, thank you so much, Renewable. Okay, and this is our last person for now, NK Fame. I'm going to close up the requests queue since we have been at this for around like 2 hours and counting. Hey, what's up?
Hello everyone.
Hi.
Hello, hello, Sparky and hello, Witty. Okay, sorry for my English first. I have a question to ask you about. Do you have a plan to do the test mode for new player because of your competitive farm simulation? To let them manage their resource, to let them manage their land adjustment is when the new player come enter to the crypto unicorn discourse. They often ask about how many land should they have, how many unicorn should they have, and which type of land should they buy. I got a lot of these questions. So this is my question. Do you have a plan to do the test mode?
No, specifically because the farm sim is not where that spending the effort to build a test mode there is just not as interesting as jousting, Team RPG, Unicorn Party, where those games are much easier to on-ramp in. Like, for example, with Unicorn Party, what do I need to play? A unicorn. Okay, any type of unicorn? Yep, because it's skill-based, right? Team RPG, you're getting way more into the weeds of the battle meta, but there's going to be guides and things like that for players that want to pick up a team of 5 corns and begin to participate in those loops and those leaderboards, as well as our existing players that just want to take corns they have and experiment with those things, right? Jousting, it's like, okay, well, what do you need? It's like, well, it depends on the tier of tournament that you want to rank in, right? And so there'll be a kind of separate discussion around that front to help a player get there. Now, what I will say is we are rethinking how players onboard into the experience and giving them an opportunity to pre-purchase, have a little bit of an experience. So like with Unicorn Party, you don't even need a unicorn to kind of play, and you're not playing in a tournament where you can really get much. But if you just want to try that out, you can, right? And so the farm sim represents the bottom of the funnel. It represents the most complicated game loop that we have. Yes, we're adding a onboarding tutorial with the release next week to kind of help people with that. But the idea of giving someone a fake farm so they can farm fake berries and figure that part to me is wasted work relative to the opportunity to onboard players via these other loops that are coming. And hopefully over time, getting them to step into the complexity of what we've built, right? So, I gave this example earlier, but I'll give it again because I think it's an important point. If we see a player come in who starts jousting and they get close, maybe they win an early tournament, but they miss out on the weekend tournament, the prize pool, and they go, this is kind of interesting. I want to get more into the breeding game behind this, right? I don't just want to, buy corns from other people. I'm going to go ahead and buy a plot of land. Well, great. That individual is kind of ramping into that experience very specifically to breed and evolve for jousting. And they may not, for a long time, expand their land. But then they get to a point where they're like, I'm buying all these berries off the RMP from other farmers, and these other materials and items to create my potions and things. Like, if I get 4 or 5 more plots, all of a sudden I can begin to produce for myself, right? That is the hope that is what we hope to see with these new launches, is that people trickle down to the complexity of the farm sim. So I don't disagree with what you're coming forward with. It is very complicated to figure out what you need and to ramp into that farming loop experience. And what I hope is that we can use the battle loops as a primary driver to bring new players into our experience. And over time, those players trickle down into the complexity of the farm sim. So I hope that answers your question, but that's kind of the thinking that we have on it currently, and why we're not prioritizing resources to give some pure free-to-play thing that doesn't really have any meaning or matter, right? There will be plenty of try this and see if you like it experiences via the battle loop, and I just don't think the effort should be spent on the farm sim. We want the most hardcore, dedicated players to become landowners, because we're driving the most value down to that foundation of the economy.
Okay, thanks, Aron.
I appreciate you coming up and asking the question.
Okay, thank you so much, NK Fame. So we got our spoken questions are all done, but we do have around 10 or so written questions. Would you like to address them here, or we can just reply to them later?
Let's do rapid fire for 10 minutes and then we'll kill it. So I'll try to not rant like I normally do and get through them as quickly as possible. Let's do it.
All right. Okay. So I am listening to the Roadshow Deck extravaganza that happened 6 months ago. How is it going with the Polygon Validator node?
Oh, God. That's been an absolute pain in the ass. One of the most frustrating experiences I've had in the space to date. So the update there is the Polygon team finally got around to telling us, oh, well, you're going to have to go through the DAO process. They've made it very vague. They've made it very clear that it is no longer guaranteed. And I literally have an email where I'm saying, so you're telling us you're changing this on us after I got full approval from your own PR group on a thread with Ryan Wyatt and Sandeep and Sri Ranch and all of these guys who said, yep, go announce this to your community. So it's been a mess. It has been delayed. We still plan to go through the process and attempt to get one. I believe we deserve one for everything that we've contributed to that ecosystem. But that whole piece has been an absolute mess. I do recognize that Polygon as an organization has matured over the period of time that we've been there. But yeah, I would expect after Sri Ranch and Sandeep approve something that we would get it, and again, it got approved by their own PR for us to make that announcement. So yeah, frustrating. That was something I was very excited about and I felt was great recognition for all the value that we have brought to that ecosystem. Time and time again, entrepreneurs in the space have said the reason they chose Polygon is because of us. So it is very, very frustrating. That's something that I've been open with that team about. And so next steps are going through the DAO process and having to kind of quote unquote make our case to the wider Polygon community around why we deserve a validator. So when the community can weigh in on that discussion and help support and push that forward, we'll let everybody know, as that'll be kind of the next step on that front.
All right, spicy. Next up, connected to that, to the Roadshow deck, is there a plan to develop more secondary partner games beyond the ones that have been announced so far?
Absolutely. Part of the whole plan was to begin to onboard a bunch of developers globally to our tech and tools so that they could be a launch pad for other developers. So a bunch of things that have been in the background that we don't talk about that had to get built is like a game bank for second party titles that is separate of our core game bank. So we can also spread out the risk of potential exploits in these things and not have it be tied into one game bank. We can manage each of these projects separately. So that's been really very cool. We've, in the background, gotten all of our analytics to work together so we can build these leaderboards that, doesn't matter if it's Unicorn Party or Rainbow Rumble, like we can pull all the data, put it in one source of truth, build leaderboards on top of it. So we have this kind of leaderboard, this cross-game leaderboard analytics and leaderboard platform. We wrote a specific CMS pipeline for second-party devs to use that means they don't have to completely integrate LG Core and all of our front-end tech and tools if they have all their own tooling on the Unity front, for example, as well as our server. They don't want to deal with that. But the CMS pipeline allows them to pull a unicorn down and have it display pretty much one-to-one how it would display in our core game. And so the first line of, or the first wave of second-party titles, we've had to build a lot of underlying platform tech that is going to make the second and the third wave much better. So ideally, I would love to see and hope that this set of games inspires other developers to come in and say, we would like to build, X, Y, or Z game, right? Like, we need our version of Dookie Dash, right? Like, there are a lot of loops that are not year-plus long endeavors to build that I think would add a lot of value. And we want those partners to come to us. We want them to work with us very closely so we can create interoperability from day one in the economic design of these games and things. So that is something that I am very hopeful to see more of. I don't want to have to be the one going out, signing on the developers and things of that nature. I want to create an ecosystem that naturally is attracting developers globally to come and build on our tech and tools. And every single day, we're getting closer and closer with what we've delivered to facilitate this first wave, to make the on-ramp experience into building in the ecosystem even better. And so that's been something that we just don't really talk about. A bunch of work we're not taking credit for. And I think it is, though, adding a lot of value on that front. So if you've got an idea for a game, we want to hear about it.
All right, you heard that, gang. Let's make this IP like Mario every single game ever. Okay, next up. We have 36K members in our Discord. Is there any initiative to convert them into DAU?
Yes, the Lurker campaign was a very specific airdrop to those community members. Surprise, surprise, it had the highest flip rate. Now, it was still an acceptable flip rate, but it had the highest flip rate. That gave me a lot of concern. It said, well, okay, there's clearly a chunk of people in here that maybe it's current market environment, et cetera. But that gave us a little bit of pause. So we are rethinking about, or thinking about different ways to structure that campaign. But yes, there is. We've attempted it. It wasn't the results that we were hoping for. I would have expected it to be the highest value campaign to us. And again, I think we're going to need to iterate on that further. If you have ideas on how to activate the lurkers, we're all ears around that front. In the past, as we've tried to bring people in and do giveaways, we get accusations of, you're just bringing in people that are coming into flip. And I think that's partly true and partly is a valid concern. But what we want to also see is like, well, how do we structure a way for someone to on-ramp and like earn a bundle or something over time in Discord that isn't just mindless engagement farming or, almost like, obviously you don't want things that would support bot behavior and stuff like that. So ideas on that front, I've mentioned things like a referral or affiliate programs. Like these are things where we'd love to hear feedback from the community on and see if maybe someone has an idea we've not thought of yet that we can implement pretty quickly and try again. Because yeah, ideally in a perfect world, we scale, the next 10, 20K monthly daily active wallets completely and purely out of Discord where people have at least expressed some interest in joining. And so make it clear we do plan to run more lurker activation campaigns, but they will likely have a different structure given we were not very successful with the first drop.
All right. Next up, with the recent changes to RBW emission in questing and staking, it appears staking has become more profitable relative to playing the game. What are the short and mid-term plans regarding to this? And what role does jousting play in this?
Staking V2 is the crux of this. If you have badges and you are applying those badges to your play account and boosting your staking rewards, that's how you net that out. I mentioned this is a point of frustration for me endlessly, because early on we had accusations of, which were true, that if you were passively staking, you were earning more than playing the game. So with quests, and yes, just like any new feature, game developer, it's just like new meta in Call of Duty when they're trying to sell you a gun. They make that gun kind of the meta, and then they sell that gun, right? Like, we obviously made quests and RBW acquisition via quest the meta. And you look at I quoted this at the very beginning of this, a little over 5 million RBW was held by Unicorn and landholders pre-launch of Quest. Today, it sits at nearly 12 million. So we more than doubled it over the course of just like 60 days, or however long it's been, I guess since November. Everything's running together. It's not that long period of time. And you look at, well, how many new wallets did we grow in that period of time? Not nearly enough to be inflating that supply. So of course, we've constrained the supply of RBW coming out of Quest. It's not my responsibility at any point in time to produce ROI for any single player here. It's your responsibility to figure out a way based on your strategy to do so. Staking V2, which of course is literally rolling out in the next couple of weeks, addresses part of this problem, because it will take the pool of emissions going to single-sided RBW stakers, and it will point more and more and more of it, especially as more and more badges are earned over time, towards those who are active and engaged and adding value within our community. And you should look at it as kind of a little, here's my piggy bank I'm putting it in at, and then I'm taking and unstaking, and instead of dumping, you're putting that into gameplay, right? Quests are don't just have value because you can extract RBW out of. And every single person here should understand that it was overtuned in the beginning as a carrot to try the feature. We thought more growth was going to come, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I've kind of been through this a billion times. So again, every 2 weeks we retune quests. I've mentioned before with Quest V2 and Quest chaining and these things, like there will be ways for players to grind through quest trees and things of that nature to, get to RBW payouts and things of that nature, right? But don't, forget about staking V2 as a feature that is shipping now, which will, again, I think, remap RBW distribution towards those who are most active and engaged within our community, and obviously over reward active players versus passive. But it's this constant thing, and I would just ask that our community kind of take into account all of the changes that we have made and the different things that we've tried. And also, when they come up with these questions, having taken some time to really look at the data and go, well, was it right to more than double the amount of RBW in the hands of the players over 60 days? I'm not going to say whether it was right or wrong. It was a lot of inflation all at once, tied with the continued dumping from passive stakers. We've obviously reduced emissions on that front. Lots of drama along the path of doing that, but we did it. And staking V2 takes the emissions that are left and points it more towards the active players and participants. So I really appreciate that question. It's a great one to ask. I think we as a team, particularly our CM team, need to do a much better job of walking people through all the why, because it's not just one system. You have to look at every system and how they interoperate to understand the plan that we're trying to do. It's one of the greatest struggles here of the level of transparency that we operate at, the level of opens up a lot of scrutiny, and a lot of the conversation in Discord, again, is very narrowly focused around a certain aspect and thing. And it's so hard to translate, but if you take a step back and you look at all the systems, here was our plan. I'm not saying our plan was right. And we've obviously tweaked and tuned it every other week to optimize it. But so far I felt part of the frustration is the pendulum that swings, right? We get complaints on one side, we make changes, the complaints are on the other side. Quest was never meant to just be an RBW ROI faucet for everybody here, ever. Happy to take a follow-up. That's an important question. It's an important question.
Okay.
I got time for a couple more, Sparkly. Let's keep them running. I feel like I'm on a roll.
All right. Yeah,
Let's
just
do
a few
two
more
more.
left. Gotcha. Explain your rationale around nerfing the winter loot boxes after we put all the effort in obtaining them. This has happened before, and it would be nice if it didn't happen again. It feels like some basic economic projections and thinking about the impact of oversupply of Unim would have already made you realize what would happen beforehand.
We added that as a response to tightening RBW. So this is such a perfect example of what I'm talking about, right? So it's like, okay, we'll add Unim in there. I did complain to the design team myself about this one because I felt like it was oversupplying, especially right when we got things tightened down. And so, yeah, we made a change to it. We made a change to it actually in direct response from a number of players who were frustrated by it. So that's, I think, a perfect example of us responding to critique in a way that was very quick. Ideally, we don't make those changes over the during an event, right? I do want to, the thing that I do want to continue to set a precedent that the meta changes all the time. And the whole purpose of the system we've built is such that it can evolve over time and change and adapt to market conditions, both internal economic conditions and macroeconomic conditions. And we need to get, I think, even quicker at kind of making these changes. Basic economic progressions and projections and all that kind of stuff, we obviously have. You know, what we anticipated was more breeding and Evo in the lead up to jousting, which would have easily have sunk that, right? There's 145 million Unim that would be burned, I believe, just involving the 30,000 babies that we currently have. So it's not like we sit here and we're just throwing things against the wall, right? But we are trying to predict human behavior. And I can promise you that that's one of the hardest things you could ever do, is to try to predict human behavior. And we are almost always not going to get that right. And then we make changes. Great question. It literally illustrates this pendulum and the sentiment that we have on the Laguna front, which is the expectation that 50% of our players are always unhappy with something that we're doing.
Oh boy.
It's the reality of it. It's the reality of it. You know, balancing a real economy, there are going to be participants on one side that are unhappy. There are going to be participants on another side that are happy. So I've got about 50% of players coming to me, you know, saying, thank you for not dumping a bunch of it, you know, Unim on us. We made it transparent that we were making this change, so people are aware of it. And we got another group that is like, you know, where's my Unim? It's a balancing act. It's a balancing act, and it is difficult, and it is tough. And I do think we can point to us getting better and better at it, though a goal is to be less reactive over time. I want to be less reactive over time.
Okay, we have around 5 questions left.
I've got time for one more. Pick your favorite.
Okay, I'm doing the one that is not a question. Please read us out loud, Sparkly. I wanted to give a shout out to the CS team. Amazing Unicorn, Fabulous Unicorn, and team. You are doing a fantastic job. I know it's not easy to be the one that has to deal with people who come to you with problems. Your professionalism, speed of response, and courteous attitude always takes my frustration down. We value your contribution. No, your contribution is critical to CU's success. No other Web3 game has the same quality of support. Stay resilient. Stay great.
It's wonderful to hear. They deserve a huge shout out. And that is one of the things that I think we've improved drastically since launch and continue to improve. So love to hear that. Love to hear that. Should I just end on a quick statement and then we'll wrap it up, Sparkly?
Yeah, that sounds good.
I'm really appreciative of the community that we have, both old and new. I think at times I get frustrated by certain things. And we've absolutely had to deal with a lot of drama recently, kind of across the board. but I recognize at times I can come off as flippant, or that I don't care. And I also need to realize that in the space that we're in, where there's still blatant fraud and rug pulls and projects are shit in the bed kind of, daily, it seems like now. I need to be better about how I interact and respond to the community. As we've scaled, I've got this wonderful team of people who are taking care of the day-to-day for me now. And you should expect myself and Zaori and Christina and Katrina to be public facing in both to external communities as well as internally with our community. And so I just want everybody to know that I really do appreciate feedback, good, bad, and ugly. I don't want people to hold back feedback. We will always get better at processing feedback to separate out the emotion behind the feedback from the feedback itself. That is a core thing that we talk about a lot internally. I'm not always the best at it. But I do think the future looks very bright for us as a community. And we're right here on the eve of a bunch of launches and an opportunity to really make a splash in this industry. And so it's a time where I hope we can all kind of come together and make a big push to try to collectively push all of this forward. Those that would seek to sow dissension and make it us versus them are not obviously here and interested in the success of this thing and in us, working together. And I recognize that I have to be a person who is always embracing the community and embracing all that comes with that. And the promise that I make to you all is I will get better at it, as I have. But I wanted to kind of make that statement here at the end. Like, I really feel like we are at this critical inflection point. We're finally putting so many of the pieces together that have been a part of the puzzle, but not together yet. That I really, again, would ask that the community and, our most engaged and valuable community members continue with the feedback. Let's try to get more in the weeds and talk about decisions behind why we did certain things. Through governance, we want to funnel more and more opportunity for the community to come forward with quest designs and things that we just vote on and immediately put in the next tuning release and these things. And so just know, and I hope that many of you recognize how far we've come. And that doesn't mean that we're at the end state. It is a constant iterative process by which we will get better. And I think together we can collectively turn the corner here and have CryptoUnicorns really take its rightful place at the top of this industry. Like, I'm a very competitive person. I'm someone that cares a lot that we all win together. And you're gonna see us. I would just hope that we can all work together to achieve that goal. And I'll leave it at that, Sparkly. Hopefully on a sort of positive note after a lot of caffeine. And a hell of a marathon. This has been a great town hall. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been 2 hours, 30 minutes and a bit more. We stand a man of accountability. Thank you so much, Aron. Can we get an ooh for the road?
Of course. Ooh.
Ooh. All right. Thank you so much. So that concludes our bi-weekly Town Hall number 32. Any questions in the Town Hall 32 thread will be answered later by me or by other CMT members. We will see you next week. No, next week for bi-weekly Town Hall number 33 with members of the internal team. So we have IG Rob, Rice, Catacorn, and oh shoot, Ziori. Yes, I keep forgetting how to pronounce it. We'll post a recording of this town hall on our socials if you would like to give it a real listen. Don't forget to share this with your friends and fellow unicorn family who could not make it. If you have more burning questions, feel free to reach out on our support channels, the Mod Support channel and the Acid Devs channel. Again, this has been Sparkly Unicorn and Vitty Unicorn host and CryptoUnicorns co-founder and CEO, Aron Beierschmitt. Good morning, good night, and see you in game, Unicorn fam. Ulu.